Chapter 1051 Gods and Guardians Part 3. What? The class said in unison. This doesn't make sense. Lith said, I remember talking with a dryad who said that after evolving, plants gain a stronger connection with the Great Mother. She was most certainly referring to Mogr. That's just a partial misconception. Faluel shook her head. Mogr doesn't care for single races or continents, only about the balance. The only individuals she takes an interest in are those she considers possible candidates for the role of guardian. Tyrus is the Great Mother because she was chosen to embody Mogr's nurturing nature and promote the development of all species. Unlike Ligane, who hoards knowledge, or Salark, who uses it for personal gain, Tyrus spreads it. If you studied the history of the different continents, you'd see that the Griffin Kingdom leads and the others follow. Sure, they can do better than us, but change always starts here. You mentioned 6 guardians that once were worshipped as gods, but so far you named only 3, and I fail to see how any of them could have been considered a god by the 4 races since they interact in such a whimsical way with them. Solus said, Once again, you speak in hindsight and driven by your human standpoint. Faluel sighed. Guardians tried to be part of the 4 races and to guide them at the best of their abilities. Yet after the 4 races either distorted or exploited their teachings to subjugate one another, forcing them to intervene and fix their messes, most of the guardians just gave up. Once, Ligane was considered the god of knowledge. He accepted students, and becoming one of his priestesses was considered a great honor. His students all became exceptional mages, while his priestess, who shared his knowledge, were considered oracles capable of answering any question and even of predicting the future. Salark, too, accepted students, who would become either the great magical swordsmen you read about in the legends or the makers of legendary artifacts. Salark is considered the god of us forge masters. She crafts and upgrades her equipment in a split second, and according to lore, she only needs a glance to replicate any item. Faluel said, What do you mean, according to lore? Lith asked. Salark fights alone. The only people who survive after witnessing her battles are those she is teaching to, and all of her students are now dead. Faluel replied. Tyrus, instead, was considered the god of life. Her students would all become magi. Most of them were less skilled or driven than Ligane's students, but they would all focus on making Mogr a better place rather than on themselves. Finnegar the Leviathan was considered the god of discovery. He is probably the only creature that has traveled through the entirety of Mogr, even legendary zones like the fringes of which we'll talk another time. He is similar to Ligane, yet completely different. While Ligane focuses on studying the existent and making sure such knowledge is preserved, Finnegar only cares for the research of the unknown, be it a physical place or a new magical discipline. His apprentices discovered new branches of magic, but just like their teacher, they lost interest after a while and started to explore new projects, so whatever Ligane hasn't recorded has been lost to time. Zagran the Garuda was the god of might. Unlike Salark, who battles to conquer and inspire others, she only fights to improve her own strength. She isn't interested in killing her opponents, because it's only through the fight that she improves. Her disciples mostly became monks and mages obsessed with reaching the white core of immortality, but none of them succeeded. Please, I can't shove everything in a single lesson. Let me continue. Faluel stopped their questions before they could say them out loud. Roger the Fenrir was the god of mana. He spends his life trying to understand how mana and world energy interact. He believes that since all living beings have mana, but only sentient beings have a core, it might be linked with the soul. His disciples researched ways to turn crystals into living beings, and if it was possible to reincarnate people by preserving their core. He was often mistaken for the god of the afterlife because of his knowledge, but death is not his trait. Some say that Baba Yaga learned from both Zagran and Roger. According to such rumors, it was their knowledge that millennia ago allowed her to create the 4th race, the undead. Any question? Faluel said. Of the original 6 guardians, 3 live in the Garland continent. Where do the other 3 live? Naurin asked. In the Giera continent, the closest place to Garland, they can live without fighting with their counterparts. Finnegar and Ligane despise each other, just like Salark can't stand Zagran. The last time they met, Tyrus punched Roger a continent away. Faluel said while looking at her clock. By the Great Mother, I didn't notice how much time has passed. Lunch break, and then I'll give you your first lesson of magic. Light magic. Eat whatever you want, and wherever you want except than here. I want to spend some quality time alone. Before they could even speak, Faluel was back into rude. Freya said once they found themselves outside the lair. She could have at least told us how much time we have before blinking us out. Faluel will probably contact me the moment she is ready. Lith showed his council's amulet with pride, leaving them all flabbergasted. It was made of Davris instead of silver, and had a white magical gemstone instead of a blue one, making it a priceless artifact. That said, Freya, shouldn't you be more respectful toward your future master? Seriously, what were you thinking? Floria said. To her, the idea of her sister becoming a harbinger was no joking matter. Would you really spend your whole life serving a Hydra? Sure, Faluel looks nice, but you would still need her permission to marry, have children, or even dating someone. This isn't like with our parents. You can't defy her once you undergo the ritual. And maybe we shouldn't talk about it right on Faluel's doorstep. Quilla said. Lith warped away, and, after a few seconds, a gate appeared in front of his friends. They found themselves inside Solas's tower in the Mirror Hall, where Solas was waiting for them in her human form. I've arranged the dining room so that you can talk in private. Lith, Naurand, and I will dine in a different room, she said, once again doing her best to suppress her emotions. Solas cared deeply for Freya, but she was aware that even though they had spent countless hours together, Freya had always considered her nothing but Lith's stone ring. Thanks for your concern, Solas. Freya gave her a small bow, making Solas feel like a stranger. But there's no need for separate rooms. Lith is my best friend, and I want him to understand my reasons. It's clear you're very important to him, and are also the reason why he took care of us in the first place. This makes you important to me as well, and I'd love to have your company. Chapter 1052 Gods and Guardians Part 4. As for Naurand, making him dine alone would be beyond rude. And since we're going to spend quite a bit of time together, we'd better start now. Freya said. Naurand didn't like being on the receiving end of such blunt sincerity, but crashing the party beat, spending all of his apprenticeship alone. He just gave her a small bow as a thank you and remained silent. Worst case scenario, I'll pretend to listen and nod from time to time. I don't know them or what they went through, and honestly, I don't care. The problem is that I can't keep living like this. I must learn how to interact with the other races properly. I can't use my grief to cut everyone out of my life. Naurand thought. Lith moved them all to the dining room, where a circular table set for 6 people waited for them. Everything from the napkins to the cutlery was the product of exquisite craftsmanship. Are you hitting on one of us or what? Quilla said while appreciating the gold-veined porcelain plates. I didn't expect such luxury from someone as stingy as you. Nope, I'm just showing off my tower. Lith smirked. Solas can replicate anything we see as long as it doesn't require enchanted materials, so I can have whatever I want just by window shopping. You must be the only show-off who's also a cheapskate. The Ernest sisters laughed in unison. He truly is. Solas joined them. You have no idea how long it took me to have Lith dine in more than just a replica of the Varen's kitchen. I'm a creature of habit, Lith replied with a snort. Yeah, right. If not for Floria and Camilla, his idea of romantic dinner would still be a well-done steak wolfed down over the forge between experiments. Solas said. After Lith took 6 pork shanks accompanied by Makosh's award-winning red ale he had bought for the occasion out of his pocket dimension, and everyone started eating, Freya spoke. I know that my choice might sound reckless to you, but this is my life. I didn't tell you about it because you can't possibly understand my situation and because it's too painful. She had to admit that Lith had excellent taste in beer. May we can't fully understand, but we can at least try. Floria said. I don't believe you came to such a big decision out of the blue. You must have thought about it for a long time. Well, I never considered becoming a harbinger until today. That was a desperate move, but you're right about the rest. Freya said. The truth is that before your mother, Mom, adopted me, I had all my life planned out. I would take the reins of the Solivar household and make sure that my family grew in power, establishing us as a magical bloodline. I was ready to accept an arranged marriage and give birth to children until I had a magically gifted heir, but you know how it went. After my mother betrayed the kingdom, I was left with nothing but the stigma of a traitor. The Urnas already had an heir, Guneen. Your family is already an established magical bloodline, and I was adopted. I wasn't part of the line of succession and had to just content myself with survival. I think I would have gone insane if I didn't have to take care of Quilla. Freya took her sister's hand, looking at her with affection. She was even more adrift than I was, and I poured all my energy into helping her not only because she needed me, but also because I didn't have the strength to face reality. Once our group split up, after Quilla started to walk on her own, I had to do the same. Unlike Euphoria, my long-term plan was forever lost, and unlike Quilla, I had no real passion nor interest. I never understood Litha's goals, and to be honest, I still don't, so following any of you wasn't an option. On top of that, I was tired of competing and failing against you all. I never felt special. No matter what I did, one of you would manage to do it better. My guild was supposed to be my way out of mediocrity. I wanted to explore the kingdom on my terms, to be my own boss. My plan was to find new companions, to find my place in the world, or at least understand what the heck I want to do with my life. Freya sighed. Yet even though everything went as I wanted, I never felt more alone in my life. I missed you all like crazy. No one of my new companions was really trustworthy. Most of them just wanted to hit on me or leech on the Erna's household. More than an adventurer, I've been a babysitter for lesser mages. During the last few years, I had my share of flings, but no boyfriends. Heck, I don't even know if I ever loved any of them, or if I was just trying to fill the void I felt in my heart. Yet I soldiered on and did what society expects from an adult mage. I earned my living doing a job I hated. I spent time with people I didn't actually care about, and I researched dimensional magic. Now, however, my guild is gone. I don't care enough about it to start from scratch, not when you all are about to go to a place where I can't reach you anymore. Freya put down her cutlery, doing her best to hold back her tears. Even when I risked years of lifespan in Xantia, I didn't care because you were with me, Lith. Between you and Protector, you made me feel more alive in those few days than I had been in years. You made me remember how it feels to fight alongside someone you really trust. Down in those caves, even inside Baba Yaga's hut, I wasn't afraid of the future because you, my sisters, were with me. The time we spent in the mines made me understand that I'm sick and tired of wasting my life with something I don't care about. I don't want to feel so alone never again. Yet Lith and Floria are awakened while Quilla is bound to be the next Manohar if she learns from Faluel. I'm ready to become a harbinger because at least it would allow me to not be a burden for you guys. I don't care about my freedom because it's wasted on me. I don't know what to do, and I'm too tired to care anymore. If Faluel rejects me, I might as well go back home and marry one of Mom's relatives from the Myrock household. At least I'm certain that Mom will pick for me someone who will treat me right, and I will be finally done with struggling for everything. I can't live with the thought of always being on the losing end, nor of losing you guys forever. I'd rather give up and accept my mediocrity. How dare you talk like that about my hottest friend? Lith said with such sincere outrage that made her giggle and pissed off the rest. You have 3 specializations, one of which is rarer than finding a unicorn under a rainbow, and you are an excellent tactician. Chapter 1053 Shapeshifting Part 1. If you are mediocre, Freya, then what about everyone else? Half the people who graduate from the academies every year can't hold a candle to you. Solus and I pooled up our talents to replicate your dimensional ruler spell, but we failed because we lack your dimensional awareness. Lith is right, Floria said. I graduated from the White Griffin with only 1 specialization, so I can tell how amazing is someone like you who managed to achieve 3 of them at the same time. I wouldn't have ever become a Forge Master without Dad's tutoring, nor learned Tier 4 healing magic without Quilla. Don't get me started about how pissed off I am at myself. Quilla said, not only have I mastered only 2 specializations, but my combat prowess is nigh 0, whereas you are all gods of war. I have no idea what a specialization is, but I agree with Freya. Naurin said, you are failing to grasp her point. It's not a matter of how much she learned so much as of how little satisfaction she got from what you consider achievements. I know I'm a great healer and that many would kill to learn light mastery, but I would give up all my magic if it meant to have my tribe back. His sadness was tempered by the tender meat with a side of roasted potatoes and by the excellent beer. The Erna's sisters looked at him with a puzzled expression, uncertain how to reply. Lith briefly explained to them how his tribe had been tasked with sealing Dawn forever and had been exterminated by the horsemen after she fused with Akala. The three were shocked hearing how the traitorous ranger had betrayed more than just his country. In his search for power, Akela had not hesitated to kill the very people who had saved him from committing suicide, and even his own wife. Thanks, Naurant. Your words mean a lot to me, Freya said. Comparing her situation with that of the Razar made her feel like a spoiled brat throwing a tantrum. No need to thank me. I can relate to you because my life got turned upside down as well, and I know how hard it is to find a place where you belong after being uprooted. I spent decades preparing to take my mother's place among the keepers of the horsemen just to become a babysitter. I realize it could have gone much worse, but I can't say I'm satisfied with the outcome. I had a sacred duty to uphold and a betrothed to marry, yet now I have no purpose in life nor a family to take care of but protectors. I know how you feel, and I can only respect your determination in finding a solution to your problem, Naurant said, killing the conversation. At that point, the only thing that arguing with Freya could achieve was to hurt his feelings. They all knew and respected grief enough to postpone the discussion to another day, away from the Razar. Changing the subject, I'm quite surprised by how easily you and Quilla accepted Solas's existence. Lith said to Freya, I feared you might resent me for keeping her a secret for so long. Thanks for breaking the ice on my behalf. I'm still too embarrassed to speak with them freely, Solas said through their mind link. Less thinking and more talking, partner. Lith replied, I'll be honest with you. Freya moved her gaze from Lith to Solas, having a hard time accepting how two beings so different could fit so well together. One was short, kind, and shy, while the other was Lith. Had you stopped Floria from breaking up with you, by now you two would probably be married, and I'd be scared shitless of you, Lith. I would have no way to know if Solas was your mistress, or if you had been playing with Floria's feelings all along just to get your hands on the Ernez's riches and magical legacy. No offense, but everyone here knows how ruthless you are. Everyone nodded at her words, even Solas and Naurant. Yet even after she broke up with you, you didn't hold any grudge. Sure, you childishly avoided her, but that was understandable since you cared so much for her. Instead of giving me or Quilla the cold shoulder when we were of no use to you anymore, you kept being a great friend. You didn't hit on us, you never asked anything from my family, even when the two of us were assistant professors. Only then did I manage to get over your switch personality and understood how much you cared for us. The events in Xantia and Quilla only proved me right. I'm a bit pissed off at you, not at Solas, for keeping her a secret, but I understand why you did it. Freya said. Thanks, Freya. I really hope we can become friends. Solas said with a smile so happy that made Freya feel even more stupid. Floria had told her sisters about Solas's struggle to get a life of her own, and even Naurant called himself lucky compared to her. Same here, Quilla said. I was honestly afraid that our relationship would wither. After Uriel's death and Floria dumping you, you had no reason to stick with us, but you did. I'm not afraid to admit that without you and Freya, I wouldn't have ever graduated from the White Griffin. Back in Quilla, you didn't hesitate to expose your secret to save Floria and I. After accepting your nature as a hybrid, after listening to how Solas fought by your side for us at every step and seeing her in action in your tower back in the camp, I'm angry only because you should have told me sooner. What is done, Lith sighed. You have every right to be mad at me, but even if I could turn back time, I wouldn't change anything. My secrets would have only made your life even more difficult, and, as you just said, it's because of the hardships that we went through together that we came to trust each other so much. I'm really curious, Solas. How was the academy for you? There was no point in beating a dead horse and make the mood gloomier than it already was, so Freya changed the topic. Great and terrible at the same time. On the one hand, I had never seen so many magic books or people our age. My condition as a stone ring, on the other hand, almost drove me crazy. Solas said, I was so thrilled when you and Uriel approached us, but Lith trusted no one. After Floria joined the group, I dreamed countless times of being able to speak with you all like this. This is one of the happiest days of my life. The fact that after all she had gone through, Solas could keep smiling like that just because of sharing a meal with other people made everyone else feel like a crybaby. How many floors is the tower supposed to have? Quilla asked. Beats me. Solas shrugged. In my memories, it's something enormous that extends both upward to the sky and downward through the ground. Yet so far it has only 5 floors, and I've already achieved a cyan core. Unless the next levels unlock several floors at once, there should be 4 floors left. Chapter 1054 Shapeshifting Part 2. What do you think Faluel's next lesson will be about? Floria had still mixed feelings about both Solus and Lith, so she preferred to move back to neutral grounds. Not light mastery for sure. Naurin said, I've agreed to teach it only to Lith, Solus, and Faluel. No offense, but it's the legacy of my people, and I don't plan on sharing it with strangers. None taken, but wow. Did you take rudeness classes, or it's just natural talent? Freya said, I'm just being honest. Naurin would have liked more beer, but he was starting to feel sleepy and the lesson could start at any moment. You were bound to find out, and there was no way to sugarcoat the news. I thought it was better to put my cards on the table rather than act all mushy now and then drop them out of the blue. From a fellow healer to another, you're kind of a jerk, Quilla said. Thanks. Naurin replied with a smile, as if she had complimented him. The group kept chatting until Litha's council amulet lit up. Playtime is over, kids. Get back here. Faluel was still in her Hydra form, and her snakehead spoke with a hissing voice that creeped them out. The stark contrast between her human and emperor beast appearance only made her look like a monster out of a fairy tale. By the time they warped inside Faluel's lair, the lab counters were gone, and she was back in her human form. I hope you had a good time and a pleasant meal, because I sure did. She was wearing blue overalls with several silvery tools coming out of its front pocket and a black shirt underneath. Her outfit and the sawdust amid her hair made Faluel look more like a carpenter than a mage. Do you have any quick questions before we start the lesson? Any doubts that came to your mind during lunch? She asked. I have a few. Floria said. How does one become a guardian, and why do they turn into beasts after being appointed? Is there a meaning behind it? You become a guardian if Mogr chooses you. Faluel shrugged. As for the rest, you got it wrong. They didn't turn into beasts. They were all beasts to start with. What? The Ernest sisters said in unison. 2 continents and no human guardian? How is that possible? Freya's question made Faluel chuckle. Good gods, you girls would fit perfectly in the council right now. There is no human guardian on the whole Mogr, just like there isn't a plant guardian nor an undead guardian. Only beasts have ever managed to become one. What does this mean? Freya said. Does Mogr discriminate? Quilla asked. Are beasts the chosen race, or what? Floria asked. I said quick questions, whereas those lead only to a philosophical debate that to this day has no answer. No one knows, sorry. Faluel said. I've got a quick one. Lith said. Why there are only lesser dragons? Are the other guardians' bloodlines purer, more stable, or what? There aren't just lesser dragons. Do you remember Fila the Behemoth? Well, she's a lesser griffin. All guardians' bloodline can experience mutations that usually lead to a new and weaker species. Guardians are apex predators. Improving their bodies is something that I think even Mogr would find it difficult to achieve. Anyone else? Faluel waited a few seconds before resuming to talk. Excellent. Since you are all accomplished healers, I will now proceed to explain to you one of the most common arts that Awakened use, while most other creatures don't. Shapeshifting. It allows us to change their physical appearance and blend in more easily in a different society, or to create us fake identities when we don't want to be recognized. Before starting, let's make a quick recap. Why do people consider shapeshifting to be just a myth? Faluel asked. Because shapeshifting is nothing but body sculpting applied to the whole body. The smallest mistake while altering someone's life force can have terrible consequences. Brain damage, organs failure, deformities, and that's just naming a few. Quilla said. Correct. Anything else? Shapeshifting is as dangerous as it's pointless from a fighting standpoint. Lith said. No matter how big you make yourself, the mass doesn't change nor does your strength. On top of that, moving with a body that it's not yours messes up your muscles' memory, and you need to get used to it every single time. Correct again. Faluel nodded. Aside from making someone taller, slenderer, or more beautiful, shapeshifting doesn't change the nature of things, only their appearance. It also has several more risks that normal people never consider. There is a reason why people like Raga don't try to appear younger nor Awakened make themselves look like Tista all the time. There's also a reason why a Hydra like me doesn't just shapeshift into a 7-headed dragon to not be pegged as lesser anymore. When you change your appearance, you're not only fooling others, but yourself as well. Those who keep a fake appearance for too long often forget about their real self, about how they really are, and become unable to revert to their original state. No matter how good-looking or muscular you make yourself, that's a lie, and as such, it limits your natural potential. In the long term, such deep changes in the life force end up affecting the development of the individual. Your body wasn't meant to be like that, and the changes you applied might as well suppress rather than enhance your natural abilities. Among awakened, shape-shifting your body into that of another member of your race is almost considered a taboo. Faluel said, "Wait, what about you then? What about Protector and his hybrid form?" Freya asked. "Those are both excellent questions. Changing into another race is easier because it's too different from your original form to affect your mind. Usually, beasts only have one human appearance, and they stick to it all their life. On top of that, since our mass is much greater than a human's, compressing our forms helps us to keep our life force stable and retain most of our skills. We lose our fangs and claws, but our life force remains almost the same. Feel free to use Scanner on me." Faluel reverted to his Hydra form, making it easier for everyone to put a hand on her at the same time. To Scanner, Faluel's life force looked like a bright violet star that burned with power. Lith could even see what looked like solar flares and eruptions. The surface of the star was never still. It was comprised of countless streams of energy that flowed into each other, countering their respective effects, and allowing the star to keep its form stable despite the apparent chaos. "Oh gods, and here I thought humans' life force was complex." Quilla said, "Keep looking, I'm about to shapeshift." Faluel's body shrunk, and so did her life force. The maelstrom that comprised the violet star became more violent as the currents above compressed those below. By the time Faluel was back in her human form, her life force was apparently stable again. The star was still violet, and its power unchanged. It had just gotten smaller and reshaped so to look like a human's life force, but instead of Lego bricks and erector set, it was still made of energy streams. All the excess mass was stored in a compressed star identical to the original that was located where the human heart was supposed to be. Chapter 1055, Shapeshifting Part 3. "Do you understand now?" Faluel said. "Having a bigger body makes so that when I turn into a smaller figure, I can retain most of my abilities. I only need to affect enough life force to shape my new form, whereas the rest remains the same. Now for my next trick." Faluel started to change again, assuming what could be considered a dragon hydra hybrid. Her body was not humanoid but covered in thick emerald scales, about 3.5 meters, 11 feet 6 inches, tall. She had 7 snake heads, each one on a serpentine neck over 4 times longer than a human's, allowing them to look in every direction. Both her hands and feet ended with razor-sharp claws, and there was a set of membranous wings on her back. Her life force was back to look like a violet star, but it wasn't a perfect sphere anymore. It was possible to see some bumps and dents that altered the path of the energy streams, making them move awkwardly. Yet that happened only on the surface. Below, the star was still compressed and retained its original form. "This is my hybrid form. The bumps and dents you see are the alterations I needed to look more like a dragon and less like a hydra. Getting legs and arms messed up with my usually stumpy, but also incredibly sturdy body, making it weaker. Usually, you always attack the heads and necks of a hydra because the rest is harder than steel. To sustain the 7 heads and move freely, our whole body is nothing but a bundle of muscles covered with scales so hard that they make it as solid as a mountain. Our long, slender necks, however, offer a much easier target. As for the wings, I wasn't born with them, so getting used to fly took me a lot of practice. I only use the hybrid form when I'm forced to fight in enclosed spaces because it's better than my human body, but it's still inferior to a hydra." Faluel shape-shifted back into her human form. "Now, if you can take your hands off me, I would really appreciate it. As much as I like you, Floria, I don't appreciate getting groped on a first date." Nowrand and Lith had their hands on the hydra's shoulders, whereas the Ernest sisters were in front of Faluel. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Floria blushed, realizing that having no knowledge of a hydra anatomy, the place where she had put her hand on the Emperor Beast had turned out to be Faluel's human breasts. "I was joking, child." She chuckled. "Back to our lesson. You now have all the elements to understand why shape-shifting is easier for beasts and more dangerous for humans. Naurin. It's because turning into a smaller body allows you to keep the extra life force in its original state, whereas turning into a bigger one means to stretch your life force and making it frilier. Correct. It's not because our life force is simpler or easier to manipulate, but just a matter of mass. That's why I suggest you to practice shape-shifting mainly on your Emperor Beast body and not your human form. It will save you a lot of troubles. Life force works exactly like metal. Faluel took a steel plate from one of her nearby forges. Getting smaller just means to increase its density, like bending and folding this plate on itself over and over until it becomes no bigger than a toy. She used spirit magic to turn it into a rectangular ingot no bigger than a deck of cards. Getting bigger, instead, means to spread your mass to the point that even the weakest impact can shatter your body. Another pulse of spirit magic unfolded the ingot while pulling it in every direction. Soon it was a square with a side of over 10 meters, 33 feet, but it was also so thin that even Quilla could pierce it with a fist. Emperor beasts choose as their human appearance simply how they want to be perceived by humans. It's not a rational choice, but only a matter of how they see themselves in relation to your society. Our hybrid form, instead, is simply a means to not be restricted by our massive size. Sometimes a bigger body just means a bigger target. The hybrid form allows us to employ all kinds of weapons while retaining most of our strength, but the more you alter it, the weaker it becomes. To give you an example, if I remove the wings, my hybrid form becomes more stable and hence stronger, but sometimes aerial maneuverability is more important than raw power. All of you can't assume an Emperor Beast or a magical beast form because you lack mass. It would be a dangerous procedure and a pointless exercise since your clumsy movements would give out your real nature. On top of that, learning how to move on all four and how to use a beast's senses would require more effort than it's worth. You'll practice changing from a human to another since discretion is a priceless asset. I'll split you into teams based on your nature. Wait, I have a question. Lith said, cutting Faluel short. Care sharing it with the class? In the past, Solus and I have merged a few times, becoming no different from Akala and Dawn. The last time it happened, my body grew in size, and I was a lot stronger than usual. How do you explain it? Lith said. I need more details. Faluel replied. Lith told her how it had happened the first time when Scarlet had tried to kill him to study Solus, the second time when they had made up for their first and only big quarrel, and the third time while fighting the bright day. You told me you can fuse your minds at will. Can you do the same with your bodies? Faluel said. No, we tried multiple times, but we always failed. It's not enough to just agree on it. We must be in perfect sync. After defeating Dawn, our union broke only when Camilla called me since Solus likes her, but not as much as I do. Lith winked at Faluel. Lith, I can see you winking. Solus said from her desk. I have a couple of explanations for the phenomenon. Are you sure you won't tell me about what Solus's real nature is? The Hydra had no idea that Solus was Manadian's legacy, and Lith liked to keep things that way. I sure am. Then you'll have to settle for my guesses. I've noticed that Solus is becoming bigger as she recovers her abilities. Hence either somehow she just adds her mass to your own, and the resulting union works just like a new limb, or she has a battle form that gets unlocked due to your temporarily combined prowess. In both cases, you don't get new mass from nothing. You borrow hers, which in turn increases by absorbing the surrounding energy and materials, correct? Faluel said. Correct. Lith nodded. After all, the first time we both got just stronger. The second time, the tower got a new floor and you got your energy body. The third time we were on a mana geyser, but you couldn't take your tower form. Chapter 1056, Shapeshifting Part 4. Maybe the creature we formed was a fusion of my hybrid form and yours. With the tower's mass, there's no telling how big I might become. Lith thought. Yeah, but it's also a bit creepy. It also doesn't explain why since you gained the blue core, you temporarily grow in size on your own during each breakthrough. It might be related to your world tribulations or to your life forces merging. Do we want to talk about it with Faluel? Solus said. Not in front of the others. Scarlet might have told her about my world tribulation since according to Protector, she spectated and even discussed it with Tyrus. If that's the case, she's just respecting my privacy. But if not, it's big news. Lith replied. By my maker. You just got rid of your secrets just to add a new one. Solus said with a groan. Fine, you win. Lith shared with everyone the description of what happened to him during a breakthrough or a world tribulation. After all, Quilla, Floria, and Protector already witnessed it. If Moger wanted me to be discreet about my tribulations, she could have sent me a note when she talked with Solus. Lith thought, I'm glad that you finally told me about your tribulations. As for the changes you experienced during your breakthroughs, I have no explanation for it, but I'm certain that they are unrelated to your chances of becoming a guardian. Only time will tell if your growing life forces will also require more mass. Faluel said with a warm smile and without a shred of surprise. Fuck me sideways. How much did exactly Scarlet tell Faluel about me? Litho? I'm even happier to see you opening up with your friends. Faluel waved her hand to all those present, Naurand included. If I were you, however, I will not share it with any other awakened. Not that they would try to harm you, since making an enemy out of a possible guardian is not a wise choice. Also, any attempt on your life would anger the Beast and Human Council big time, but the other factions might consider you a threat. It's better if they keep considering you just a human-beast hybrid. This way you can avoid making enemies inside the council. So that's why in Kulla you already had 4 wings, the long tail, and all 7 eyes opened. Floria needed to sit down, and the others quickly followed her lead. Hybrid, awakened, and even guardian? And here I thought that my life was messed up, Freya said. Sadly, I have to agree. Lith sighed. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes either. Faluel said. The moment Lith fails a world tribulation, his crippled life force will be the least of his problems. I've lost a few friends that way. Do you mean that? Lith needed to sit down as well. Yes, they all died. Fuck me sideways. Lith slammed his head against the hardwood desk. Suddenly being the Lord of Destruction sounded like a curse rather than a blessing. There's no need to be so glum. In the last few centuries, a lot of beasts have incurred into tribulations. None of them has become a guardian, but very few of them died for it. Faluel tried to cheer him up, meaning, a world tribulation happens only when your will and Mogers are in perfect sync, just like your union with Solus. It's a very rare event, since usually Moger doesn't wish for anything. Living a quiet life usually implies avoiding further tribulations. Faluel said. Now, let's get back to our lesson. Freya, Quilla, you will work with me. Naurand and Floria, both of you can use true magic, so you're paired up. Solus, you will work with Lith. Your lack of a body and your natural ability to shape-shift your stone form regardless of your life force makes it impossible for you to practice on your own. Yet you know Lith's life force as the back of your hand, and your bond will allow you to experience the pain from any mistake you might make. Faluel patted the stone doll's head that was now Solus's appearance to reassure her. What do you mean, pain? Freya asked. Today, you will learn how to change only the most external details, like the length of your hair, the shape of your nose, and your face. Do not attempt to alter your height, your organs, and most of all, do not even get close to your brain. One of the most important differences between fake and true mages is that the latter can weave spells with their minds, whereas the former needs to speak and form hand signs. That means that any mistake with the hands, voice, or even the tongue will leave the fake mage blocked in an imperfect body with no way to fix it. True mages, instead, as long as their brain is not affected, can always cast spells and correct their mistakes. It's the reason why learning how to shapeshift is so dangerous for fake mages and relatively easy for those like Awakened or the children of Emperor Beasts who can use true magic. Before we start, we have to address a problem first. Lith, Floria, and Solus, come here. Faluel beckoned to them. Based on what you told me, your breathing technique, invigoration, doesn't allow you to see life forces, correct? Correct. Solus and I worked on it since the 5th year of Academy, but we never managed to fix the issue. Lith said, that's why self-awakened often need a mentor. Faluel stood on her tiptoes and ruffled his hair as if he was a child. Show me how it works, and I'll tell you what you are doing wrong. There's no harm doing it, Lith thought. Faluel's breathing technique has been passed down for generations, so it's bound to be better than mine. Lith did as instructed, showing and telling her how he performed invigoration. Naurand, Freya, and Quilla exploited the opportunity to learn it as well, but not having a shred of awakening in them, they failed. Faluel, instead, learned it on the first try. Then the Hydra used invigoration on herself to understand its strengths and limitations. It's an excellent technique for something made by a child. Faluel had no idea Lith had always been an adult, nor how much thought he had put in all of his creations. Thanks. Lith and I worked a lot on it over the years. Solus knew that Floria could spot Lith's lies, but her own face was literally a stone mask. Let me guess, you created it with in mind the goal to study and understand the changes in your body. Faluel said. Exactly. Back then I had no idea what a core was nor what its color meant. It's only thanks to invigoration that I understood what being an awakened meant. Lith said. That's the problem. You see, another common misconception is to think of life force as something small, hidden inside the body. Yet the truth is that the life force is neither small nor hidden. Life force is what shapes the entirety of your bodies, both internally and externally. You created invigoration as a spyglass that allows you to see a single pine needle, but at the same time, it gives you tunnel vision and keeps you from seeing the pine tree. You need to change how invigoration distributes the world energy through your body and stop focusing on the details. As it is, invigoration allows you to collect and put together small bits of information, but it fails at perceiving the bigger picture. Chapter 1057 Elbow Grease Part 1. Faluel instructed Lith, Solus, and Floria how to modify invigoration by taking shallower breaths and holding them in longer. That way, the world energy would only flood the outer layer of their bodies without providing useless information about the single cells. The Hydra's breathing technique, Lifestream, could see more than just life forces and mana cores, but she couldn't entrust such abilities to someone so young whose wisdom she had yet to put to the test. I'm sorry, Lith, but knowledge is the greatest power a mage can achieve. Too much and too fast can be toxic for a young mind. Too many of my children became drunk on power and let their natural gifts corrupt their personality. Faluel thought. Lith and Solus needed a few attempts to succeed, but mostly because changing invigoration that much felt almost like betraying a dear friend. The breathing technique was as old as Lith and had saved their lives countless times. Giving up on it made them mourn like the day the gatekeeper sword broke. Finally, Lith said as soon as he became able to see his own life force without scanner. By the Great Mother, it's so much more accurate than scanner. Yeah, the best part is that we can now both regain our mana and check on our patients without a tier 5 spell draining our focus. Now that Faluel had shown them how to modify a breathing technique, Solus was eager to experiment on her own. Floria was a beginner, so it took her some guidance to succeed. I thought you forbid me from using breathing techniques until my body stabilized. Should I use scanner instead of invigoration? Floria said. No need. Invigoration is just a variation of the technique Lith uses to develop his mana core. You can't use any of those techniques to rejuvenate your body or refine your core because it might put you at risk. Using invigoration as a diagnostic tool, instead, requires solely to circulate the world energy without assimilating it. The amount you'll use for the exercise is so little energy that it's safe. Faluel said. Wait a minute. Scarlet never taught Protector a breathing technique, so I had to teach him mine. How did he manage to shapeshift? Lith asked. She taught him just what he needed. Protector is a self-awakened, like you, so he is bound to have his own breathing technique even if he doesn't realize it. Scarlet's teachings were meant to give him the foundation to perfect it, but when you taught invigoration to Protector, he fused them without noticing. Faluel explained. She then showed them a box full of black spheres the size of an orange and offered it to them. Take one, pass the rest along. She said, Why are you giving us guilty ballots? Quilla looked around, almost expecting to see bullies everywhere. Gods, no. Those are life sculptures. Just take one, imprint it, and then press the big button. Faluel laughed. Sounds more like a ballot by the second. Quilla mumbled. Yet once she performed the last step, instead of calling for help, the life sculpture projected in her mind how Quilla's life force was shaped down to the smallest detail. Good gods, this is amazing. If we had these things at the White Griffin, our studies about body sculpting would advance by leaps and bounds. She said, As I said earlier, the greatest danger of shapeshifting is being unable to restore your original body. This way, even if you forget something, the life sculpture will aid you to not lose your way. Faluel gave Quilla a polite bow as thank you for her compliment. Unlike normal enchanted items, anyone can press the button and check your life force. That means that even in case you become unable to use magic, someone else can use the life sculpture to understand what went wrong and save you. Beginners should always work in teams and practice one at a time. Start by altering your bodies and don't stop unless you're exhausted or you need help fixing a mistake. Lith, Solus, and Floria spent the first few minutes getting accustomed to their new and improved invigoration. Only once they made sure that their breathing technique was in no way inferior to Scanner did they start practicing. Lith tried to make his hair longer and ended up bald. Then he tried to shorten his nose that he always found to be a bit too long for his taste, crooking it as a result. By my maker, you trained too much, and now you look like a clone of One Fist Dude. Solus laughed her ass off. Professor Faluel, what am I doing wrong? Lith had a hard time not laughing as well. 10 points to Lith for asking help, and 10 more for lighting my cave with his brilliant mind. Faluel had no such problem while pointing at his shiny head. She checked his life sculpture and then his life force. Everyone, stop what you're doing and listen. Lith tried to extend his life force to make his hair longer and shortened that of his nose to get it smaller. Who can tell me what he did wrong? No one raised their hand, making Faluel sigh with disappointment. Extending the hair made them brittle. He should have stimulated his metabolism to provide them with nutrients as they grew. As Lith did, instead, he had the same mass spread over double its natural length until the hair couldn't support its own weight. As for the nose, you can't just shorten the bits you don't like and leave the rest as it is. You have to shorten the nose as a whole, otherwise you get a zigzag effect. Remember, if you extend something, something else must get shorter. You don't get free mass. Faluel said while fixing Lith's appearance. Solus tried something simpler, making his hair wheat blonde and changing the length of a single nail. Once she was done, Lith looked as if someone had spilled bleach on his head and had put his finger into acid, but at least they managed to fix everything on their own. How do I look? Quilla asked after making her face resemble Freya's. Creepy as fuck, her sister said. Your talent really is impressive. Faluel gave her applause. Thanks, but between your explanations and the years I spent practicing body sculpting, I think I have an unfair advantage compared to others. Quilla puffed her chest out with pride in contrast with her words. No more than Lith Invigoration gives him more information than Scanner does, and it doesn't cost mana. On top of that, it also requires less focus. Faluel said. Yet Freya is right, you're creepy. Don't mimic others, please. They kept practicing non-stop until dinner time came. Lith had focused on his hair, trying all the haircuts of Earth's singers he could remember. Solus, instead, focused on his eyes, trying to make them look less cruel. By the end of the lesson, Naurin could change his skin color at will, switching from his usual bronze to a shade of pink almost identical to the citizens of the kingdom or to the pale skin typical of the empire in the blink of an eye. I just need to change my cut, eye as well to go unnoticed, he said after checking the results of his labor in a mirror. Chapter 1058 Elbow Grease Part 2. Freya focused on her nose, trying to ruin the symmetry of her face to look more inconspicuous, while Floria worked on her cheekbones. Faluel allowed them a short break to catch their breath since all the non-awakened were dead tired. They were exchanging opinions on their respective results and sharing the mistakes they had made when a sudden knocking took them all by surprise. It's too late for Protector to come, and I wasn't expecting visits. Faluel focused on the door, receiving an image of her surprise guest. Camilla is here. At those words, Solus turned from stone doll back into her ring form and hid under her desk before Faluel let Lith's girlfriend in. Is there something wrong, Miss Yeval? Faluel asked. Actually, yes. I'm here to arrest Lith on the charges of not being home for dinner and mistreatment of girlfriend. Camilla had such a serious face and tone that it made the Hydra laugh. Nice try, but no cigar. I'll let them grab a bite to eat and then put them back to work. You should know that an awakened needs but a breath to recover their strength. Faluel shook her head. Yeah, but Lith and Floria are the only awakened. On top of that, I seem to recall that her body is still highly unstable, so Lith would be the only one working all night long. Camilla replied, cracking her opponent's armor who couldn't tell her about Solus. I've worked all day and I really miss my boyfriend. His body and mind might be fixed by invigoration, but what about his heart? Would you really keep us apart on a whim? Please, Tell me that you're as beautiful inside as you are on the outside. Between Camilla's words and her looking at Faluel with big, puppy eyes, the Hydra was unable to reply. Faluel knew a great deal about loneliness and isolation. That plus Litha's personality issues tipped the scale in Camilla's favor. Fine. Class dismissed. I expect him here at sunrise, Faluel said. The class fell to the ground, thanking the gods for their mercy amid pants and groans. Everyone was drenched in sweat, their bodies sore from the mana abuse and the strain of shape-shifting for hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Camilla hugged the Hydra and gave her a baking tray from the dimensional amulet. The smell of food that spread throughout the lair was so good that it made everyone's mouth water. It's one of my specialties and I should have made enough for everyone, Camilla said while Faluel looked at the delicious lasagna with greed. There was enough to feed 8 people, but for a Hydra it was barely a bite. Do you want me to move you to Dirios? Faluel said. Yes, please. I've arranged a romantic dinner back home just for the 2 of us. Camilla embraced Lith and kissed him despite his pungent smell. Lith is really a lucky man, Naurin said in envy. No, I'm the lucky one. I hope you enjoy my recipe. See you soon. Camilla waved at them while the warping array covered the distance separating the lair from the capital of the Distar Marquiate in one go. From there, a couple of warp gates and a flight of stairs led the couple to their apartment in Belius. Why don't we move somewhere else? This city is so glum, Lith said. No way. This is our home, the place where we shared a lot of wonderful moments together. I'm not going to move without an excellent reason. Camilla firmly refused. Besides, it's perfect for 2. It's already furnished with magical appliances, and thanks to the city's safety measures, no one can bother us with a surprise visit. She closed her army amulet inside a drawer, hoping it would remain silent. Now go take a shower, please. Your smell is ruining the ambience I worked so hard to set. The house was clean and candlelit. The table had been set for 2 with all the mystical camellias Lith had gifted Camilla arranged in the middle as centerpiece. The food was already on the table, covered by Litha's doggy bags. From his visits to Huriol, Lith had learned how to create enchanted cookware that would keep the food warm even in the presence of a dimensional blocking array. Camilla had no idea why he had named them like that since they had no dog nor Lith wanted one, but she had learned to not ask too many questions. I thought you didn't mind me exercising. Care to join me in the shower? He said with a come-hither gesture. I don't mind a bit of sweat, not hours of dried sweat covered by more sweat. Camilla said. As for the shower, I'd like to, but I can't. I have to give the finishing touches to the table. Her reply disappointed Lith, but the thought that he had just a few hours before going back to his apprenticeship made him agree with her. After he was done, Lith found Camilla waiting for him at the table. She wore a gorgeous black cocktail dress with a keyhole neckline that left her arms and shoulders exposed. Homemade food, beer from Makosh, and that dress? I thought I was under arrest or something, Lith said while holding her between his arms. You've been a very bad boyfriend, Archmage Verhin, but your punishment can wait until after dinner. She gave him a long, sweet kiss before pushing him away. If you dare to waste all my efforts, you'll spend the next fortnight on the couch. How did your first day of apprenticeship go? Lith told her a bit about the history of the Guardians before moving to his shape-shifting lesson. Bald with a crooked nose? Man, I would have loved to be there. She laughed. Did you take a picture or something? Luckily for me, no. I can't believe it's so hard even with Faluel's teachings and her help to upgrade invigoration. It would have taken me years only to understand the basics on my own. Lith sighed. Do you think that Freya will really take the oath of a harbinger? That would be really big news, Camilla said. Why big news? It's something that involves only her and Faluel. By the way, this is the best food you've ever made. What's the secret ingredient? Gods, you're so naive. First, Floria quit the army for good. Then the Crystal Shield got disbanded. And now Quilla took a sabbatical from the White Griffin Academy. The Urnas are drifting away from the kingdom and following you into the beast's fold. The royals are worried. The entire Urna's household is royally pissed off, and with them more than half the royal court. Dyrus is in hot water because even without proof, everyone is blaming him for those events. Between you, Quilla, and Manohar, the White Griffin is so enraged that if Dyrus or any of his associates asks for the Academy's help, they are likely to die from unforeseen medical complications. On top of that, if Freya becomes a harbinger, it would be the final nail in the coffin of the kingdom's hopes to keep the loyalty of the first-dimensional mage of your generation. As for the food, I'm glad that you like it. Camilla gave him a dazzling smile. The secret ingredient is elbow grease, tears, sweat, and making sure that all of that doesn't end up in the baking tray. Chapter 1059, The Seventh Element, Part 1. Knowing that you wouldn't risk your life for a long while made me so happy that I prepared all of your favorite foods. Eat to your heart content. There's plenty of seconds. Camilla said. About that, Litha's guilt for ruining her mood twisted his face into a grimace so bad that for a moment Camilla believed to have used spoiled ingredients. Please, tell me that it's because of the food, she said once she understood what was about to happen. No, it's delicious. The problem is my potential guardianhood. Lith explained to her everything he had learned about world tribulations. He didn't want to hide anything but solace from her, and Camilla had the right to know that he might drop dead the moment he failed a tribulation. That's wonderful news, Camilla replied, shocking Lith. I can't believe I'm dating the future seventh god of Mogar. Guardians are not gods, and I'm not even sure I'll. Stop right there. I told you to not waste my efforts to prepare our date. Camilla slammed her hand on the table and cut him short. No pessimism allowed in this house, not tonight. I forbid you to die, hence you shall not. Are we clear? Crystal. Lith chuckled at how amazing she was. Good. Now, inmate Verhen, say once again how much you like the food and how good this dress looks on me. She took a pair of handcuffs from under her chair and made it rattle on her palm. The food is beyond delicious, and the only thing more beautiful than your dress is the woman wearing it, Constable Yevel. Lith understood the theme of the evening and brought Camilla on his lap before kissing her. Don't get cocky, prisoner. I've still a lot of orders for you tonight, Camilla said while gently caressing his hair. The following day, Lith met the others in front of Faluel's lair while the sun rose from the horizon, painting the treetops yellow. Solus jumped back on his hand the moment she perceived him approaching. Thank the gods you're here. Yesterday I spent a lot of energy and the mana geyser helped me to regain a bit of my strength, but I still need you for the real deal. Solus could feel her mana core recovering by the second, even without the use of invigoration. Litha's bright blue core provided her with an amazing amount of nourishment, which coupled with all the sleep she had, and the world energy absorbed by the tower allowed her for a quick recovery. Quilla suddenly clung to him in an awkward embrace akin to that of a slumbering bear holding to a tree in the attempt to resist the call of winter hibernation. I envy you, Solus. Lith doesn't work for me, and I still feel like crap. Her voice slurred, and her eyes were half closed. How can you be so tired? We only practiced in the afternoon, and we had over 8 hours of rest. Lith asked, receiving Quilla's snoring as an answer. How can you not be dead tired? Freya replied. Academy lessons lasted 2 hours, and we only had 3 tops a day. Yesterday we had 2 lessons, and we practiced from after lunch to dinner. 7 frigging hours of non-stop spellcasting is 1 hour more than we did at the academy during the entire day. If Faluel keeps up like this, not even I might be able to put up with the workload. Naurinyat. He had 2 bodies and his meditation techniques to assist his recovery, but his human form was beat nonetheless due to his lack of stamina. I'm the one in better shape after a good night's sleep, but my body ached all night as if I fought instead of resting. Is it normal? Floria asked. Yes. Once an awakened acquires a blue core, their body becomes able to absorb world energy and circulate life force without the use of any technique. You, however, went from the body of a red-cored human to that of a blue cord in one go. The unease you felt was probably due to the strain you endured yesterday, tempering your body and making its refinement progress further. If you used invigoration instead, its rejuvenating effects would have kept your body as it was. Lith said. I couldn't have said it better. Faluel opened the door of her lair while checking everyone with invigoration. Naurind, Quilla, your bodies are too weak. You need physical training as well. Floria, Lith, good job not using invigoration to recover. Magic is for an awakened's body what the flames of a forge are for a blade. It tempers your whole being and allows the impurities you still possess to move to your weakest areas. Freya, Solus, The fact that you both are still standing despite your condition demonstrates how promising your talent is. Faluel touched everyone but the awakened in the group and used invigoration to restore solely their vitality. Get in, your lesson has already started. Faluel made the desks and chairs appear before forcing everyone to sit down. Today I'll tell you about spirit magic and then we'll proceed with the practice. Even though non-awakened can't use it, the knowledge I'll share during this lesson will help you survive in the case you face awakened enemies and might even help you to come up with better spells. First of all, what is spirit magic? It's the embodiment of the mana flow that only awakened possess. Creatures like magical beasts, emperor beasts, abominations, and the other fallen races all can use magic in its true form, but not spirit magic. That's because true magic is nothing but the ability to weave the runes that comprise a spell with your mind. The species I mentioned have powerful cores and an affinity to the elements so high that, to them, calling upon the elements requires but a shred of mana. Elemental spells need to be cast in an amount of energy that even a slumbering core can produce. Spirit magic, instead, is comprised of pure mana. Even in its first magic form, spirit magics is more energy expensive than any other element and requires constant focus. Faluel waved her hands in the air, making emerald tendrils of energy come out from her fingers. Usually, it's invisible to the naked eye, but life vision can detect it, and you can feel spirit magic with your touch because of its physical nature. The tendrils moved close to the desks, allowing everyone to experience spirit magic. Even though the green mana looked ethereal and they could see through it as if it was a green mist, the tendrils were as hard as steel to the touch. Quilla even put a piece of paper on her tendril, and it remained in midair, following the shape of the emerald construct. At a first glance, its solid state seems cool, but it's actually one of spirit magic weaknesses. Spirit magic requires a constant flow of mana to be used, and because of its nature, it can be easily dispelled. The closest comparison to spirit magic's complexity, even in its first magic form, is Tier 5 spells. They both need willpower to be shaped. They can be used as long as you have mana, and they require a strong focus. Try to use a spell on your respective tendril. Any spell will do, Faluel said. The students did as instructed, and even before their first magic could manifest, the emerald construct started to crumble. Chapter 1060, The Seventh Element, Part 2. What the heck? Freya blurted out. As I said, pure mana. To affect something, most of its strength is focused on its point, making the tendril just a conduit. An impact strong enough can cut the tendril, and any kind of foreign mana disrupts spirit magic in its first magic form. Potions, spells that make you emit an aura like full guard, fusion magic, all of them make spirit magic a complete waste of mana. If not for it being invisible and effective on non-magical creatures, one might think that spirit magic is useless. Yet they couldn't be farther from the truth. Faluel recalled the tendrils, using them to form a translucent emerald barrier around herself. Feel free to attack me as you like. Each one of her students cast a Tier 3 spell of a different element and threw it against the barrier. Instead of just hitting it as they expected, the spherical barrier was actually spinning on itself, capturing the spells and sending them back to their caster. I could have easily used your spells against someone else, but my aim is to teach you, not to harm you. Spirit magic can resemble light mastery at a first glance, but they are very different. Spirit magic is as fast as air magic, as sturdy as earth magic. It can shape-shift like hard light constructs, but it has none of the limitations of the other elements. Its greatest downside is the huge mana expenditure it requires due to not using any elemental energy. Any question? Faluel said. I thought you would teach me spirit magic only after we completed healing magic and forge mastering. What made you change your mind? Lith said. Nothing. That's still the plan. What I'm going to teach you today is not like to weave spirit magic spells, but how to add spirit magic to your Tier 4 and 5 spells like you would with any other element. Faluel replied. What? Are you saying that spirit magic is actually the 7th element? The entirety of the class was flabbergasted and the non-awakened felt envy eating at them from the inside. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's why awakened consider themselves superior to everyone else. We are the only ones who can use the 7th element. Not the abominations, not the children of the guardians, Not even the greatest genius can use it. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Faluel gave them a few seconds to let the news sink in until their wounded pride stopped being the only voice they heard. Even in its first magic form, spirit magic can be mixed with the elements to create new effects. If used in combination with light magic, it becomes a new limb that overcomes the short range of both healing and diagnostic spells. All those who had witnessed Faluel treating Rena's unborn child finally understood what had happened. If used with darkness or earth magic, it makes them faster and easier to manipulate. Faluel flicked her wrist, shooting a sphere of darkness as fast as a bullet that was the size of a marble. It dug deep in the rock wall thanks to the darkness energy being focused on a single point instead of being spread over a huge mass. Then, Faluel raised her hands, conjuring 6 rocks the size of an adult man that struck at her students. Despite their speed, Lith and Floria managed to dodge it while Naurin conjured a hard light construct to defend himself. Unfortunately for them, the shooting stars shape-shifted into chains and changed their trajectory to follow their respective marks or get around their defenses. What the heck? Even though he was using fusion magic to boost his enhanced body, Lith wasn't able to break free from the chains. As I said, easier to manipulate. By adding kinetic energy to an element, spirit magic allows us to dramatically alter the effects of common spells. By adding spirit magic, water not only pierces its target, but it can also hit like a blunt weapon. Fire magic can use the same principle to strengthen the shockwaves it produces, making the explosion more dangerous than the flames themselves, while air magic can add the pressure from the mana to its own and repel almost all kinds of attacks. Remember that those are just examples. I'm not going to teach you my spells, only how to defend against spirit magic and how to mix with the other 6 elements. Faluel said. Wait a second. Quilla took out her Royal Forgemaster wand and made a thin silvery mist came out of its tip. She closed her eyes to remember everything Faluel had done and produced 6 silvery tendrils. One for each of her classmates and another for the Hydra. Something like this? Great Mother Almighty. Faluel recognized at first touch spirit magic despite its unusual color and it being unnaturally visible to the naked eye. Where did you get that wand? All Royal Forgemasters have one. They use it to safely interact with unknown enchanted items from a distance, cast their forge-mastering spells, and activate unknown magical formations. Quilla said, I knew the wand had to work on spirit magic because I used it against mage slayers to project my spells without touching them. Maybe it's not just limited to forge-mastering spells, but I could use it with all elements. First, remember your oath. If you divulge any of what I'm teaching you, we'll become enemies. Faluel's eyes were reduced to fiery slits brimming with mana. She had never expected that fake mages would come so close to one of the awakened community's most prized secrets. Yet her rage lasted only for the time she needed to see the huge silver lining in the matter. Second, I advise against it. Generating a strand of mana is one thing, but using enough to empower a spell might kill you. Unlike awakened, you need a set of runes to draw mana from your core. Runes that no one researched for spirit magic. The wand takes one of your hands, increasing your cast time, and even if you manage to use spirit magic in battle, the strain on your body would be too much. You have no mana flow to temper your body, nor can you perceive your core's conditions. One mistake, and you'll deplete your mana and die. It's still worth a shot. Quilla replied. I find it amazing to have finally discovered a field of magic where no other mage has ever set foot. Secrecy is no issue. You have my word. I'll work on the runes in my own free time. Count on me, sister. Freya took her own wand out of her dimensional amulet. She was no forge master, but Orion felt bad leaving her out when he had gifted the wands to his daughters. Until that moment, Freya had only considered it a cute trinket that proved how much her adoptive family loved her, but now it had gained a purpose. What about me? Naurin said, feeling left out. I'm sorry, kid, but I can't make those things and I doubt Quilla will let me study it. Faluel shook her head. No way. I won't share my kingdom's secrets with you just like I will not share yours. My dad's life is on the line. By now everyone probably knows that my sisters and I have followed Lith, so if Faluel starts making silver wands, he'll be held responsible. Quilla replied. Chapter 1061 Telepathy Part 1. She's right, Naurin. Besides, You don't know the first thing about fake magic. Even if you had a wand, you wouldn't be able to draw runes with it, correct? Faluel said. Correct. I never chanted nor performed hand signs my whole life. He realized they all had a point, but the Razar still felt pissed off. Good. Now, let's resume your lesson. Faluel nodded. Spirit magic is more than just offense. Being comprised solely by your mana and carrying your will by nature, it can also be used as a means of communication. Quilla, Lith, Solus, and Naurin have experienced it when you helped me with Rena's baby. Was that really spirit magic as well? The more Naurin learned about how useful the seventh element was, the worse his mood became. Now the chances of me teaching light mastery to the girls are a solid 0. They can keep their fucking wands just as I can keep my secrets. He thought. Yes, believe it or not, that's also first magic and the first exercise you have to complete. It will teach you how to pace yourself and avoid wasting mana or worse, injuring others. Faluel said. In the past, this branch of spirit magic was called telepathy. The theory behind it is very simple. You just have to create a tendril of spirit magic and connect it to your target. Putting it into practice, however, is complex and dangerous. Contrary to what you might think, the tendril shouldn't go to the other person's head, but to their core. That's because you are not really sharing your thoughts, but using the willpower imbued within your mana to communicate. The problem with such method is that, if not properly done, it can share more than you'd like to, flood your mind with your target's thoughts and drive you crazy, or cause mana poisoning to either of you, if not both. Faluel created several visible tendrils of mana and left one floating in front of each of her students. Good thing I never experimented it on my own. Lith thought. The consequences of failure are even worse than I predicted. Choosing Faluel as my mentor was the right thing to do. The kingdom could have never taught me any of this. Now, those of you who can produce their own tendril and connect it to mine. If you use too much mana, my tendril will fade. Too little, and it will be yours to disappear. I'm keeping them just strong enough to form a mind link, so that when you practice among yourselves, the risk of accidents should be minimal. Faluel said. What about me? Naurin asked. Some individuals are capable of projecting their conscience outwards without the need of using mana as a focus. So your task is to try and connect with the tendril on your own. Once you get sick of it, your real exercise will begin. You must also learn how to defend in the case someone attempts to manipulate your mind. Faluel said. Attack how? Solus asked. The same principle behind the mind link can be used to confuse the opponent or break their focus to keep them from casting spells. Some creatures are so expert with spirit magic that they have developed techniques similar to hypnosis. You must learn how to recognize when someone is attempting to influence you and resist the suggestion they try to plant into your mind. That's something that anyone can do, non-awakened included. I experienced something similar in Other, when the thrall of a vampire tried to hit on Camilla. Lith said, how can a wannabe undead use spirit magic, and how is it different from the mind link between Solus and me? Unless they are also awakened, undead can't use spirit magic, let alone their thralls. However, all of them are masters at manipulating the life force. They can use it to convey their will, but it requires physical contact to pass the energy from their blood cores. Another difference is that their victim must hear their command, since life force carries the willpower but not the thought. Otherwise, dragons might use origin flames to communicate. As for your mind link with Solus, it could be achieved with spirit magic, but it would kill the recipient. The more information you share, the more mana is required, causing mana poisoning. You two don't have such a problem because you have the very same mana signature, so no matter how much mana you use, it can flow freely from one to the other without the exchange affecting your reserves. Enough talk. Get to work. Faluel said. Lith and Solus burned Faluel's tendril on their first attempt. They were used to just point and shoot their thoughts. They had no need for finesse between them. Floria and Tista were beginners with spirit magic, so their tendril didn't survive the encounter with Faluel's. Tista had joined them for the lesson since spirit magic was one of the few disciplines her knowledge of which was on par with Lith's. While Freya still tried to understand how to obtain a silver strand from her wand, Quilla shaped her mana according to Faluel's until the two tendrils matched in size. Only then did she make contact and obliterated her target. Nice try, but while I decide how my tendril looks like, yours is dependent on the wand. Start small and increase the output gradually, otherwise you'll run out of mana quickly. Faluel said, even if Quilla doesn't allow me to examine her wand, I can still use the exercises to put to the test how close Royal Forge Masters are to spirit magic. She thought. Meanwhile, Naurin used his enhanced senses to perceive the mana tendril and the message it held. He tried to stimulate both of his cores, but to no avail. Then, he used a tendril of light to connect with the spirit magic, hoping that the two disciplines shared enough similarities to allow him to overcome his limits. Unfortunately for Naurin, each one of his attempts garnered him Faluel's praise, but no success. I give up. Let's move to the next phase, he said after over 1 hour of constant failures. In your shoes, I would try a bit longer, but if that's what you want, I'm okay with it. Are you ready? Faluel moved the tendril right in the middle of his eyes, barely a few millimeters from his skin. What does this mean? You said that the link is established between cores. He said, yeah, but you have 2 cores. Using the usual approach on you would mean double the mana and the chances of poisoning. I'm skilled enough to work with your brain, so it will work just the same. On top of that, I would have moved the tendril anyway as soon as you get used to my influence. A person links with your core only if they want to communicate, but if they want to harm you, they aim for the brain. It's where your cognitive process happens, and being it far from the core, attacking the brain makes the suggestion more effective. Faluel said. It took the rest of the class several attempts to successfully establish contact without harming either mana tendril, and by the time everyone succeeded 10 times out of 10, it was already lunchtime. Chapter 1062, Telepathy Part 2. This is an amazing ability. We'll be able to coordinate silently and exchange even complex information in the blink of an eye if necessary. Lith and Solus succeeded first thanks to their years of experience with mind links. By the time the lesson ended, they had become able to share images and battle plans through spirit magic. I don't get it. If this is basically first magic, why do I feel so tired? Much to anyone's surprise, Quilla had succeeded second, but had only learned how to transmit her thoughts. Because spirit magic needs a constant stream of pure mana and to imbue it with willpower, Solus replied, using it for so long drains both your core and mental focus. Master Faluel, how come did Quilla have an easier time than me? Having used spirit magic for years, and yet finished third wound Tista's pride. Because she can see her own tendril. On top of that, the brightness and thickness of the tendril are directly proportional to the amount of mana she employs, which allows her to finally adjust the output. Also, the visual aid helped her to learn faster. Should I use my wand as well, then? Floria asked. No. If you use it in battle, having an invisible means of communication is an advantage that Quilla will lack. Also, you aren't allowed to use life vision either. During a stealth mission, glowing eyes would betray your nature as a mage. Now get out of my hair. You need to rest, or our afternoon lesson will last minutes at best. Once again, Faluel kicked them out of her lair with a moment's notice, forcing them to move into Litha's tower. How was your training session, Naurin? Freya had Solus conjure a couch all for herself, to lie down and stretch her legs. She wasn't used to sitting for so long anymore, and her ass was begging for relief. Freya loved how the tower could grant her every wish while Lith took care of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Horrible. Naurin had bloodshot eyes and a terrible migraine that forced him to clench his temples. Faluel kept whispering in my head, making me feel hot and then cold, starving and then thirsty. To add insult to injury, resisting her influence left me with a headache that not even light magic can cure. Saying those words in a room full of healers was a bad move. Soon everyone gave him a checkup, and the constant touching of his head only made Naurin's pain get worse. How is that possible? Quilla asked. Beats me. Faluel just said that I had to think about it, but my head hurts so much that my eyes water. I can still almost hear her voice in my head, and it takes most of my focus to resist her suggestions. It might be an effect of mana poisoning. Solus said, try using fusion magic. If I'm right, along with the elemental energy, it will circulate your mana as well and cleanse Faluel's will. The moment Naurin activated light fusion, he could feel his headache lessening and Faluel's voice fading. He then circulated all the elements until the effects of mana poisoning disappeared. Thanks, Solus. You were right. The only problem is that now I'm even more tired than before. He asked Solus to turn his armchair into a couch as well, falling asleep the moment his head touched the pillows and waking up only once lunch was ready. After they finished eating, everyone went to sleep after taking a shower to get rid of the sweat and clear their head. Gods, I love this place, Freya said before leaving the tower after Faluel recalled them to her lair. The high-density world energy allows us to quickly recover our mana, and the beds are so soft that it's like sleeping on a cloud. Yeah, you do nothing but sleep and eat, leaving all the chores to me and Lith. Solus pouted. You guys are the worst harem ever. Everyone laughed at her joke, except Naurand, who blushed. Should I do something to repay her for my room and everything Solus is doing for me? Most importantly, how do I know she doesn't peek while I'm taking a bath? The girls might not care, but for me it's embarrassing, he thought. Solus was too happy finally having someone to share her life with to notice his discomfort. Now that Lith has finally opened up to his friends, Naurand is the grumpiest of the group. The girls, instead, seem to get along with me. I can't wait to spend some time all together doing something that is not training, she thought. Wow, we're barely halfway through the day and you all look like crap. Faluel gave the non-awakened of the group a round of invigoration. Clench your teeth and hold tight, because there won't be chatting now, only hard work. Your afternoon task is to use what you learned this morning to communicate with each other. Keep using the method I showed you earlier, and don't make direct contact unless you want a splitting headache. Solus, you train with Quilla. Lith with Floria, Tista, and Freya with me. Naurand, more torture, he whined. That, or you can practice shape-shifting on your own. Your choice. Faluel shrugged. The Razar groaned and accepted another session of mind manipulation. This time, however, as soon as he felt Faluel's influence becoming too strong, Naurand would use fusion magic to counter her. Very good. You found out one of the weaknesses of this technique all by yourself. Try to use fusion magic as little as you can, so to train your willpower and fool your opponent into believing they have succeeded influencing you. Faluel said. Actually, it was Solus's idea, Naurand said while resisting the impulse to scratch the itch Faluel caused on his back. Very bad then. Solus, I'm not letting you practice with Lith because you all must learn how to fend for yourself. If you keep giving away answers, you hinder the growth of your companions. Don't let them get used to relying on your brain and force them to use theirs. Guys, when I give you a task, you're forbidden to ask others for help. No matter how many companions you have, on the battlefield, you can rely only on yourself. Otherwise you'll become all weak-ass like Quilla. No offense, Faluel said. None taken. Quilla lied through her teeth as the truth behind those words hurt her deeply. I never learned how to fight because I assumed that I wouldn't need to. Faluel is right. I'm too reliant on others for my survival, she thought. Meanwhile, Lith and Floria needed life vision to spot each other's mana strand. Adjusting spirit magic's output took them but a few minutes thanks to the visual aid. Can you hear me? Lith asked. Yes, but your voice is barely a whisper. Try to speak louder. Floria's reply sounded messy, as if she was talking through a gag. This feels so strange. I had Scarlet and Faluel in my head in the past, but they forced their way in while this time it's like I'm letting someone in. He thought while focusing his feelings inside the mana. It feels weird to me too. Did you really spend years with Solus's voice in your head like this? Floria had a hard time sorting what thoughts she wanted to share from those she wanted to keep hidden. Chapter 1063 Mixed Spells Part 1. Yes, Solus and I always communicate like this. Focus more, please. I can barely hear you. Lith understood why they had to use two tendrils. This way, a stray thought couldn't be shared by mistake since they had to overcome the other's mana by infusing willpower in their messages. Otherwise, while asking a question, a beginner would actually reveal what they were looking for and what they were trying to avoid to their prisoner. On top of that, the double mana strand technique prevented mana poisoning. How did you know what thoughts were yours? Floria said. Even inside my head, my voice and hers sound completely different. Also, the way she thoughts is nothing like mine. Lith replied. How do you share images and plans? I tried all morning, but Faluel said none of it made sense. It's easy. You must visualize any detail you want to communicate. You can't let logic or memory fill the gaps, or the other person will receive an incomplete picture because they don't reason as you do. Lith sent her an image from their date in Venia, back when they still attended the academy. It was a picture of the night when Floria had shared with him her fears for the future, wishing to have a few more years before coming of age. What does that mean? The image triggered too many memories at once, both good and bad, making Floria's heart hurt. I used an image of our shared past to make it easier for you to understand what I mean. You were there with me, but it's likely that you remember it differently. Lith replied, You are right. To me, the stars were brighter than this, and I had completely forgotten about the chilly breeze. When she sent her version of the memory to him, it looked like a painting drawn by an artist trying to express their love for life. It depicted two people staring at a perfect night sky while holding hands. The absence of passers-by didn't give a feeling of isolation so much as of intimacy. Lith had actually toned down the romanticism in his memories because he wanted to teach her, not to take a trip down memory lane. Excellent. Now try doing the same with a memory we do not share. Before sending it to me, make sure you have a clear mental image of what you want to share. Like this. Lith showed her a clip of Akela turning into dawn. The beauty of the horseman and her raw, savage splendor left Floria in awe. Could the same happen to you? She asked before even realizing it. What could happen? The question confused Lith. Solace taking over, replacing your body with her own. I guess so. It's what happens to all those who bond with cursed objects. Why do you think Scarlet was bent on splitting us apart when she met us? Lith's indifference made her understand how deeply they trusted each other. Floria shrugged off her worries and focused on the task at hand, trying to show him both Baba Yaga and her hut. I'm so happy to be paired with you, Quilla. Back at the academy, you were my favorite. Solace's thoughts were filled with so much joy and enthusiasm that made Quilla feel awkward. Thanks, I guess. What do you mean, favorite? Her question reminded Solace that even though she knew Lith's companions for years, they had no idea of her existence until recently. Your past was similar to Lith's, yet you never let your darkness turn you into a grumpy, cynical person. I always admired your good heart. After Solace had realized how inappropriate it was to tell Quilla how she had shipped Lith back at the academy, Solace had changed the topic with a mix of truth and compliments. Thanks. Yet I consider my past self weak and naive. I let Uriel lead me by the nose at first, and then I never had the guts to do what I really wanted. Her thoughts sounded depressed, inducing Solace to change the subject. Do you know that Lith and I met a real dragon back in Uriel? Solace shared with Quilla all of her memories of Jakra. Oh my, I'd surely hit that. Quilla thought, while looking at the dragon's human appearance. I beg your pardon. Solace blushed at Quilla's following in-depth appreciation of Jakra's physical attributes. Good gods, did you heard that? I'm so sorry. I'm not a pervert. It's just that I'm not used to sharing my mind with someone else. Quilla turned to a shade of purple, making Faluel wonder what kind of naughty pictures they might be sharing and if it was appropriate for her to ask for a copy. Jokes aside, the Royal Forgemaster wand is an amazing tool. Now I understand why Mina Dion is revered as the first Royal Forgemaster, and she's considered the second greatest magus of the Griffin Kingdom. The wand not only allows fake mages to use spirit magic, but it also smooths their mana, making it a great conductor for their willpower. On the one hand, it lessens the focus required for high-precision jobs. On the other hand, Quilla and Freya have a hard time keeping stray thoughts for themselves. I learned a lot about them this morning. Those two will make two excellent subjects. Faluel thought. She had not paired up Tista and Freya, but made both of them practice with her to study the Royal Forgemaster wand. That way Faluel could better understand its properties and limitations while comparing the wand's effects with Tista's spirit magic. How am I doing? Freya asked. Please, don't tell me I'm once again the worst in my group. She added without her own knowledge. You're doing great. Your thoughts are loud and clear, much better than Floria's. On top of that, your strand is more stable than Tista's. Faluel said to help Freya overcome her self-confidence issues. Now try to share one of your memories with me. The better you remember those events, the easier it will be. Freya searched her memory for something not embarrassing nor too private that would make her look good, giving Faluel several glimpses of her past. Just like it had happened for Quilla, the little resistance the wand offered to their willpower was actually a double-edged sword. In the hope of impressing Faluel, Freya showed her the fight against the awakened in Xantia and how she had utterly defeated him despite being a fake mage. Remarkable performance. Faluel nodded. Dimensional mages are a rarity even among awakened. not only because dimensional magic is second only to gravity magic in complexity, but also because it can be easily countered. Is that a compliment or a critic? Freya said. A compliment. It means you are equally skilled in all 6 elements. Now you only have to properly send me a complex made-up thought, like a battle plan, and your exercise will be over. Faluel said. Okay, I need a break. The more Naurin learned to build his mental defenses, the more Faluel increased the pressure until he had been forced to use fusion magic just to keep up with the onslaught. Now his head ached as if he had remained trapped inside a ringing bell and had circulated so much mana that his human body was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 1064 Mixed Spells Part 2. Faluel attacked me non-stop while teaching to 2 people and keeping an eye on the others. What kind of monster can do so many things at the same time and yet have focus to spare? He thought before losing consciousness. What a silly child. He could have quit whenever he wanted, but his pride clouded his judgment. Faluel said to Freya, Are you still talking about Naurin? Freya knew that those words applied to her as well. Keeping up with Faluel's chat, showing her memories to the Hydra, and trying to accomplish each task the moment it was issued, had quickly drained her mana. Freya was already running on fumes. Mostly, Faluel said with a chuckle. I need a break as well. Freya said, dispelling the mana strand and finding herself covered in sweat. Her knees shook so hard from exhaustion that she didn't fall ass first on the ground only because she was still sitting on her chair. Lith and Solus, instead, had consumed very little mana. Years of experience with spirit magic and mind links allowed them to communicate freely using the minimum amount of focus necessary. The only problem they had was to keep in check their mana and don't flood their partner. They had no such issue between them since their mana would just flow in a loop. Seeing her sister panting like a bellows made Floria realize how tired she was and interrupt the mind link. Tista didn't like the idea of quitting right after Freya. She kept practicing until she managed to share with Faluel a detailed mental image of a contingency plan she had devised during her travels. I hope this qualifies as a complex thought, because I'm beat. She said, Don't worry. That's exactly what I wanted. We're done for now. Faluel said. First Freya, then Floria, and now Tista. They quit first, so even if I stopped now, I would have still performed better than them. Quilla thought with a smug grin on her mind. That's not a nice thing to say about your companions. Being competitive is one thing, being mean is another. Solus replied, making Quilla blush up to her ears. You weren't supposed to hear that either. We need to break up. Quilla's words after abruptly interrupting their connection made everyone chuckle. I meant the mind link. We didn't have a mind flirt or anything. She rushed to explain, regretting her words the moment they came out of her mouth. Oh my, Lith said with a sly smile. Solus, I expect a full report about that juicy blushing between you two. Don't you dare. The more Quilla got flustered, the harder he laughed. Enough picking on her. Faluel clapped her hands to get their attention. 10 minutes of break before moving on to the next subject. What do you mean, next subject? I'm tired. Quilla blurted out. What do you think invigoration is for? I need only a couple of breaths to have you back in your peak condition. Faluel's usual warm smile had never looked so scary. What about me? Floria asked. If you shut up and meditate, you will not need invigoration. Drink this. Faluel gave her a tonic, making Floria curse like a truck driver. Solus. Lith said with a worried tone. By my maker, I missed you so badly. I never considered that being free also means being off and alone. Solus said. I missed you more. Sometimes the silence in my head is scary. When you are away from me, a mean voice tells me how stupid I am for trusting others, and that it will only lead to more pain. Lith replied, That makes the two of us. Mine says that I'll never be able to walk among people nor have a normal life. She sighed. They spent the rest of the time in silence, simply appreciating each other's company and the feeling of security that their bond granted them. How do you feel? Faluel asked. Lith and Solus gave her a thumbs up. Naurin kept sleeping, while the others assumed a fetal position, hiding their faces between their knees. Excellent. Faluel used invigoration on the non-awakened and resumed speaking before Naurin could realize that the nightmare in front of his eyes was real. Now that you are accustomed to the basics of spirit magic, let's move to something more complex. As I said earlier, spirit magic is the 7th element, and it can be mixed with the others. I'll only teach you how to cast mixed spells and up to tier 3. Upper tiers are part of my legacy, and I'm not going to share them. I will still provide you with all the means to come up with your own spells, or in the case of the non-awakened, the means to defend themselves. First, a quick recap. Normal spells are obtained by mixing your mana with the external elemental energies. Like this. A sphere of thunder appeared in Faluel's left palm. This is something anyone can do. Fake mages, true mages, and awakened. What only awakened can do is to replace their mana with spirit magic, use it to bond with the elemental energies, and then coat them with it. Faluel waved her hand, and a small air blade the size of a saucer struck at one of the walls, leaving a small cut in the rock. That's regular first magic. A second wave generated another small blade, the features of which were visible to the naked eye. The air blade struck the wall, and after leaving a deeper cut that formed an X with the other, it returned to Faluel like an obedient dog. While that is spirit magic mixed with first magic, as you can see, it allows me to bend or ignore some of the rules the elements usually abide by. Air blades don't disappear after a single hit. Darkness becomes fast, and well, you know the rest. Your task is simply to use spirit magic instead of mana to cast your favorite first magic spell. If you succeed, remember that you'll need to coat the conjured elemental energy with the same amount of spirit magic, or the differences with a normal spell will be negligible. Faluel said, "Why can't we just conjure a first magic spell as usual and just coat it with spirit magic?" Quilla asked while Lith had already started practicing. Because that would mean mixing 3 different energies. The exercise is already difficult as it is. There's no need to further complicate it. Faluel replied. On top of that, the foundation of spirit magic allows the rest to be spread evenly, whereas the mana in a normal spell is bound to the elemental energy so strongly that the spirit magic can't take root. This is more difficult than I thought. Solis considered herself a master of Tier 0 spirit magic, yet the exercise baffled her. Normally, my mana mixes with the elemental energy as soon as it leaves my body, while now I have to conjure them one at a time. To weave a lightning bolt, I visualize one as I emit the mana, whereas here, I have to focus on the strand of spirit magic and only then visualize the bolt. The two thoughts don't combine easily, and solidified mana don't seem very good at conjuring the elements. Chapter 1065, The Source of All Spells, Part 1. An invisible sphere of spirit magic the size of a nut rested on Solis's hand, while electric arcs appeared around it from time to time. Unfortunately, the electricity was caused not by spirit magic, but by her failed attempts. Solis only managed to cast a second spell instead of adding the air element to spirit magic, triggering the arcs. Freya and Quilla found the task even more difficult since they had never used spirit magic before, and they had to conjure it through their wands. Naurind looked at the others in envy, yet instead of cursing the unjust fate, he watched and learned from their mistakes. Based on what Faluel said, every time I cast a spell, I actually generate a strand of spirit magic. As a true mage, my core is not awakened, but I can still use silent magic. My people can't awaken because our 2 cores would need to be refined at the same time, and we are unable to control them separately, making their output unstable. I should take this opportunity to learn how to feel mana. Worst case scenario, I can adapt Faluel's teachings to light mastery to improve it. He thought while casting first magic non-stop and focusing only on the moment the spell sparked before letting it fade away. Naurind aimed to learn how to feel the mana coming from his cores and use that knowledge to create spirit magic. Interesting, Lith thought while constantly shape-shifting the sphere of spirit magic in his hand. Faluel said to use our favorite spell, but darkness and fire are unsuited for this exercise. Explosions would distract everyone, me included, while ethereal spells are hard to study. What a sly teacher I got. The airblade was more than a demonstration, it was a hint. If the spell is done correctly, the air element doesn't disappear, and unlike earth or ice, air offers less resistance to spirit magic, making things easier for beginners like us. Lith had practiced true magic ever since he had opened his eyes on Mogr. He knew how imagination and willpower were the keys to success to every spell. Lith closed his eyes, and instead of trying to conjure the air element, he simply imagined to be holding a small vortex inside the manosphere. If there's something I learned after all these years, is that magic is simpler and yet more complex than people make it. Simpler because just like it happens for world energy, there aren't 6 or 7 different elements, just magic. More complex because taking them individually generates an unbalance that is up to the mage to restore with his willpower and mana. Lith kept his breathing steady, focusing on the flow of air coming from his own lungs. It took him a while to realize that what Faluel wanted from them was nothing more than projecting fusion magic outside their bodies. Suddenly, a small vortex appeared inside the sphere in his palm, making it visible to the naked eye. Then, Lith focused on adding solely more spirit magic to recreate the feeling of holding his weapon, something that he knew like the back of his hand. The sphere grew and extended until a misty replica of war made of yellow energy appeared in Lith's hand. Excellent work. Faluel clapped her hands. Practice and hard work never betray you. Don't be discouraged, guys. Lith is a veteran compared to you. Find your own way to succeed rather than blindly try and imitate him. Why not? A scaled version of the air blade appeared in the hand of Solas's stone doll. I meant aside from you. Faluel sighed. Try with other elements or focus on manipulating air. The choice is up to you. Even without the mind link, everything they had shared over the years had allowed them to learn how the other thought. Seeing Lith succeed was enough for Solas to complete her own technique. By the end of the lesson, everyone was dead tired. Aside from Lith and Solas, no one had managed to mix spirit and elemental magic. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Even Awakened have a hard time during their first day of spirit magic. You've seen how hard it is to manipulate mana on its own. Mixing spirit magic with the other elements is even more difficult. Faluel said, I can see from your faces how frustrated you are, so I'm going to give you the night off. Invigoration can restore your mana, vitality, and focus, but it can't lift your spirit. That's why before letting you go, I'll give you one final lesson. Her words made everyone groan in despair. Even Lith couldn't wait to take a bath and do something else. Water and earth had proven tougher than air, while light and darkness, due to their ethereal nature, were still beyond his reach. I'm sorry, it came out wrong. Not a lesson, more like a demonstration. So far, all I've explained to you is as difficult as it seems pointless. That's why I'm going to show you where these lessons will lead you if you endure them to the very end. Lith, use invigoration and step forward, please. Faluel beckoned at him. Why me? He said while rolling his eyes. You're the sturdier among them, and the only one who can last long enough to prove my point. Feel free to use all kinds of magic and your equipment. I'll use only the spirit magic that I just taught you and my physical abilities. Faluel said, Sorry, but I'm eager to put myself to the test against someone of your caliber. Lith conjured the yellow blade again. It was still fuzzy, but more distinct than before. I've yet to go all out with my new body, and you are the best opponent I could ask for. A yellow longsword appeared in her hand. It was shaped with such mastery that it had a hilt and a guard instead that just a blade like Lith's. Floria could almost differentiate its edge from the fuller and even see runes over its surface. Do your worst, and remember, I'm only restricting my physical strength and magic. Here I come. Faluel darted forward, her usual kind expression replaced by the stone mask of a warrior. Her speed is nothing I can't follow with fusion magic. I wonder what did she meant with Lith had his answer when Faluel anticipated his attempt to dodge her blade and changed the course of her lunge with a flick of the wrist. Lith managed to block and felt relieved when he realized that Faluel had adjusted her abilities to perfectly match his own. The relief, however, disappeared when her sword cut through his as if it was just a wooden stick. To make matters worse, such a balanced fight was only possible if she had somehow already grasped his limits while he had yet to learn them. The sudden awareness of the skill gap between them almost made Lith freeze. Almost. He stepped back and reformed the blade, focusing on its hardness. Get serious. Faluel's eyes sparked with yellow light, turning Lith's weapon back into just air. Chapter 1066 The Source of All Spells Part 2. Fuck me sideways. She never said she wouldn't use domination. Lith thought, while taking war out of his pocket dimension and using it to block the following attack just in the nick of time. Good choice. Faluel swung her blade again, aiming at his head. Lith had given up on dodging. Faluel's footwork was beyond him, and the moment his blade got away from his body, he would be finished. He could only focus on defense and wait for an opening. The blades clashed so hard that Lith couldn't believe Faluel's weapon was made of just air. Electrical arcs sparked on contact that would have sent Lith into a seizure if not for War neutralizing them with its world mirror ability. Lith released all the spells from his magic holding rings, but it took only a flash of Faluel's eyes to neutralize them all. Excellent move. Making me waste my mana will slow me down, but if you keep defending there is no victory. You must also attack. Faluel lunged while Lith was still shocked from seeing so many spells countered at the same time. He flew back, but Faluel's sword turned into a trident that simply extended faster than he moved. Lith tried to dodge, but the weapon followed him as if it was a living creature. That was a bad move. Sending her weapon so far from her body will slow her reaction time, Lith thought, pushing the trident aside while also using his own domination and War's World mirror ability to dispel the air element. Unfortunately, all Faluel had to do was to replace the lost element with water. The spirit magic core of the spell was untouched, allowing her to switch to an ice spear in a split second. Before Lith could realize the implications of that move, Faluel was already in front of him again. Each strike of her spear released a cold pulse equivalent to a Tier 2 spell that made him painful to breathe, while the cold stiffened his muscles, slowing down Lith's reaction time. As long as you have enough mana, First Magic can easily replace low-tier spells, so don't focus only on the blade. On top of that, by mixing Spirit Magic with the elements, a Forge Master can imitate the effects of all their creations. She said. Faluel then split her spear into 2 smaller fragments and kicked Lith in the guts while he tried to predict what kind of weapon she would conjure next. Lith didn't get fooled by her trick and intercepted Faluel's foot with his knee, but between the strength of her kick and him being in mid-air due to the flight spell, the impact sent him crashing against one of the walls. Meanwhile, the 2 fragments had formed a bow and an arrow while water had been replaced by earth. The hardest element had been turned into a weapon that could exploit the strength of the Hydra in full. Oh crap. That was all Lith managed to say when a small meteor crashed against War, making him create a small crater in the wall. Lith spat out a mouthful of blood, feeling his hands numb from the impact. Faluel didn't give him a single second of rest, making it impossible for him to cast spells. Without Solus to help him, even with Faluel restricting her abilities, the match was already over. Get over here. The mass of spirit magic had returned between her hands the moment after the impact, leaving the earth projectile behind and replacing it with fire and lightning. 2 whips cracked at him. The fiery one wrapped around War, while the lightning whip caught his hip and injected electricity inside his body. Faluel was about to drag him back to close-quarter combat, but she stopped when she saw his raised hands. I yield. Lith used his own blood to sheathe War and put it away inside his pocket dimension. How did you do that? Was that really just First Magic? Floria had no idea what she had just witnessed, but she had never seen the elements seamlessly flow into each other like that. Indeed. Faluel nodded. My goal was to show you that splitting magic into branches, or specialization as you call them, is an excellent tool to focus on one aspect at a time, but it makes mages forget about the bigger picture. Isn't this what you call battle magic? Faluel's whips turned into blades, hammers, and then spears. Isn't this what you call night magic? The weapons turned into solid tower shields, infused with the power of the elements. Isn't this what you call warden magic? The shields shattered, instantly forming a small array big enough to affect the Hydra and her students. My point is that most of your hardships come from splitting your knowledge into small boxes and treating them as if they are different things. First Magic is the source of all spells, no matter how you call them. There are no specializations, just magic. Seeing the boundaries that they all had taken for granted during all those years shatter in front of their eyes gave everyone enlightenment. In any other circumstances, Faluel's words would sound like gibberish, but now they had the means and knowledge necessary to understand them. Even Lith cursed at his own foolishness for falling once again in the comfortable trap that habit was. He had seen Faluel cast the array so fast thanks to spirit magic, and that alone opened countless possibilities. I could give you all the answers you look for, but then you'd become incapable of tapping into your true potential. No matter the destination, it's the journey that teaches you how to overcome any obstacle you might meet in the future. Obtaining things without effort is akin to wear blinkers. It limits your perspective and makes you incapable of thinking with your own head. It's the teaching method Tyrus always used with the kingdom. The method my father used with me, and now I'm using it with you. Faluel helped Lith to stand up and healed his injuries. Lith was still in a daze, seeing all the things he had learned so far in a new light, yet his first instinct was to embrace Faluel. "Thank you for treating me like family," he said, amazed by how someone so powerful could also be that wise and soothing. Soon the others joined the embrace, thanking the Hydra for the marvels she shared with them. City of Vaelron, capital of the Griffin Kingdom, underground castle. Queen Silpha Griffin was a woman of average stature, 1.62 meters, 5 feet 4 inches, tall with a slender build, and despite being over 50 years old, it was hard thinking her a day past 30. Her long black hair was held up in a chignon, yet it still revealed her uncanny gift for the mystical arts, with all the 6 shades of colors marking her as blessed by all the gods of magic. With her square chin and sharp features, she couldn't be considered beautiful, yet the aura of confidence and power she exuded coupled with her perfect manners made her quite a charming woman. That day, she wore a light combat suit made out of adamant, yet as soft as silk thanks to the skinwalker armor technique that the Royal Forge Masters had learned from Orion's bargain with Lith. Chapter 1067, The Burden of Power Part 1. Unlike most people her age, the Queen was still in her prime. Tyrus rejuvenated Silpha on a regular basis, giving her the vigor and reflexes of a youth in her 20s. Due to her talent and constant training, the Queen had run out of worthy opponents since a young age. At first, she had resorted to sparring with members of the Queen's Corps, but after she had become a fake awakened, they couldn't keep up with her anymore. Soon, even the members of the Queen's Corps weren't her match, so she had spent the past 30 years training with Tyrus herself. The Guardian used that time to also demand a full report on the kingdom situation. "Why didn't you settle the matter with Floria Ernaz yet? I gave her my word that her career would not be affected by those disgusting ODI." Tyrus's one-handed axe intercepted the point of Silpha's spear, locking it between the blade and the handle. Then, Tyrus almost ripped the spear from Silpha's hands with a sudden twist and pull of her weapon. "I did all I could." Silpha grunted in the effort of freeing the spear before it was too late. The court is split, and each faction has its own priorities. Too many people can't wait to set foot on Giera and start a new life. Maybe, if you intervened directly. The Queen managed to pull back and use the superior range of her weapon to gain the upper hand. "I would destroy centuries of hard work." Tyrus shook her head while sidestepping the quick burst of lunges with minimal effort. "I tasked the royal family to do it for a reason. The court is always split, but it's the royals' duty to steer it in the right direction. What you asked me to do would require to reveal myself or kill Dyrus from the shadows, but that wouldn't do any good. The former would only make people flatter me as it happens with Ligane and undermine your authority, while the latter would turn me into Salark. I want my kingdom to thrive because of its people, not because of me." During each sparring session, the weapon choice would be completely random through a raffle that included even bare-handed fighting. The situation is no different from when the Civil War loomed over the country. Don't you think you could make an exception for once? Silpha cursed the spear's inability to perform anything but piercing attacks. She had never defeated Tyrus, but she had rarely felt so helpless. Too far and the First Queen would simply grab the spear with her bare hands. Too close, and Silpha would end up with nothing but a broomstick in her hands and Tyrus's fist in her stomach. The whole fight was a dance to keep her at a distance while searching for a pattern that the Guardian couldn't predict. It's completely different. Back then, you didn't know who was your enemy and who was an ally. Now, instead, you know exactly the who, the why, and the how. Tyrus replied. Balkier taught the people of the kingdom more than how to fight the undead. He taught them how to nurture talented youths, no matter their upbringing. Nalier taught the traitors that they can't trust each other, just like Dyrus is showing you the loopholes in our laws. If I take him out now, what would change? Someone else would take his place. The undead courts would find another disgruntled noble, and history would repeat itself. Challenges will always arise, and you can't just wish them away. Tyrus slashed with the axe, cutting the blade off the spear and ending the fight. What did you learn from today? That spears suck as weapons as I suck as queen. Silpha panted. You couldn't be more wrong. Tyrus shook her head while putting the axe back in the rack and the broken spear in the trash can. Spears might be simple and direct compared to other weapons, but that only means that it's up to their wielders to make up for it with their craftiness. As for you, you're a good queen. Unlike your predecessors, you never got complacent with your power, and our training sessions are proof of it. Even though my blood doesn't flow in your veins, I couldn't be any prouder of you, Silpha. For years you fought a losing battle against the old noble households until you won. You changed the academy system, and soon even the conceited mage association will get its due. Times of changes are always times of chaos. Someone like Dyrus who tries to fill the power vacuum left by the traitors you uprooted was bound to appear, and he is yet to succeed only because you stopped him. If I'm that good, then why are we struggling so much? Silpha replied, you could at least help us with those damned undead. And here you go again. Tyrus sighed, cutting the queen short. Why do people never learn the simplest of lessons? Peace, like all the most important things in life, is not something to be granted, it has to be earned. If a wolf wants to eat, it has to hunt. If a deer wants to live, it has to run. The only change that sitting around and hoping for the best can achieve is to flatten your ass. Once the undead are defeated, after Dyrus has been dealt with, something else will happen. You're the queen of an entire kingdom, which makes dealing with problems on a daily basis your job, not mine. Then, Mother, care to explain why are you still wasting your time with fleas? A melodious voce emerged from the shadows of the underground palace. It belonged to the most handsome man that Silpha had ever seen. He seemed to be in his early 20s, about 1.8 meters, 5 feet 11 inches tall. He had thick golden hair and silver eyes that shone respectively like the sun and the moon under the magical lighting of the palace. One of your children? Silpha had met enough emperor beasts to be unfazed by his good looks and focused only on the silver eyes of the stranger. Indeed. Silpha, this is Jorl. Jorl, this is Silpha, Tyrus said while the two exchanged greetings. Now that we're done with the niceties, do you mind answering my question, Mother? Most of Tyrus's children considered the royals like traitors for giving up the Griffin bloodline and resented Tyrus for not taking care of her true heirs. Jorl was among them. Because unlike you, they need me for more than coddling their ego. It's no wonder you're still stuck with a bright blue mana core after over 1,000 years of life. Your stupid pride and childishness keep you from growing. Tyrus replied with a sneer. Maybe you're right, and maybe not. Yet why did you grant that woman a violet core and refuse to do the same for me? Jorl looked at Silpha in envy. He had managed to self-awaken at 20 years of age, had reached a perfect body and bright blue core at 100 years, and been stuck there ever since. Because Silpha took a lifelong oath with me. If you're willing to do the same, I'll help you. The Queen's Corpse needs a captain who can look after the recruits in my absence. Tyrus said. Chapter 1068 The Burden of Power Part 2. Jorl found Tyrus's offer so offensive that he remained silent for over a minute. He had many flaws, but stupidity wasn't among them. Jorl knew how powerful his mother really was, and angering her would get him nothing but a beating. I'm sorry, Mother, but spending the rest of my life taking care of lesser beings is beneath me. Jorl had come for a quick ticket to power, not for a job. Silpha, do you know what your husband and Valeron have in common? Tyrus ignored her son and looked at the queen in the eyes. Neither of them wanted to be king. Marone took the test only to please his parents, and the first thing he asked me was to spare his life. He told me that he didn't feel worthy of the crown, that the thought of thousands of people dying just because he made the wrong decision gave him nightmares. Marone believed that the role of king would be better suited for a stronger, more resolute person than him. That's why I spared his life and made him king. How could strength possibly be a prerequisite when I can grant perfect core and body refinement? What I looked for was someone who understood the burden of the crown, just like Valeron. Wait, what? Wasn't Valeron a mighty warrior who unified the kingdom to bring peace to our lands? Silpha was flabbergasted. That's just the official version to rally the troops. The truth, however, is quite different. When I first met the future king of the Griffin Kingdom, he was barely a 14-year-old kid. Back then, it was the moment when a boy became a man and had to learn how to wield weapons to defend their village. Magical talents were scarce because most mages died before realizing their powers or simply never met a master their whole life. Fake magic was also terrible and barely worth the trouble learning it. I choose to awaken him not because I fell in love at first sight, as the legends say, but because Valeron was weak, poor, and had nothing to live for. My hope was that with such a troubled past, he wouldn't get drunk on power and use it wisely. Otherwise, I would have simply killed him, as I had already done countless times in the past. Like all awakened, I was responsible for his action for 100 years, and I had no desire to spend that time cleaning up his messes. Valeron, of course, mistook me for a goddess. When he finally understood I was a woman, he proposed to me, and I had to reject him a dozen times before he started to actually listen to me. I taught Valeron about magic, about how to fight, and then I just waited. He became the god of the battlefield, and yet when they offered to him the role of village chief, he refused. Valeron hated both war and political power. He didn't fight because he enjoyed it, only to protect his house and the life he cherished. Compared to magic, politics are a poisoned well. The more powerful you get, the more corrupt you become. Valeron preferred being a healer than a leader, to bring smiles rather than constantly opposing the greed of his neighbors. Yet with each victory he achieved, his village grew in size and power. With each enemy they defeated, slaves and war prisoners would be considered a standard commodity. Valeron felt guilty for it, but as a warrior and a healer, he couldn't change things. After his best efforts to abolish slavery only got him several attempts, murders, and poisoning, Valeron finally accepted the role of mayor. The nearby cities felt threatened hearing that the fabled general had become a true leader, mostly because their citizens left their corrupt domains to look for a better life under Valoran's banner. At that point, war was inevitable. More people meant the need for more farmlands to feed them, and no one believed that Valoran's ever-expanding city wouldn't one day become a threat for its neighbors. Valeron never attacked first, but each victory brought him more troubles and responsibilities. He cried every night he didn't spend searching for a proper way to organize what was more than a city, but less than a kingdom. He was an uncultured man and had no idea how to create a system of laws that couldn't be exploited to ruin his years of hard work. Yet he never gave up. He asked other awakened for help, sought emperor beasts for their wisdom, and Fae to teach him how to take care of his lands. He never hesitated to admit his faults and recognize his limits. Whenever he knew to not be up to the task, Valeron sought someone better than himself. Of course, he made a lot of mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and soon his country was on the verge of the civil war. That's when he proposed to me for the 128th time, and I accepted. What I fell in love with wasn't his power or handsome face, but his willingness to sacrifice so much to build a better place for everyone. His determination to never surrender, even when he was forced to beg or crawl in horseshit. I helped him to get rid of bad counselors, corrupt officers, and to write laws that made sense. The Griffin Kingdom didn't arise from a power-hungry man who believed to know what was best for everyone, but from a farm boy who only wanted his conscience to let him sleep peacefully at night. Tears streamed from Tyrus's eyes while she looked at the statue of Valeron sitting on the throne next to hers. When I gave him children, he was such a good father that they wanted to be like him rather than me. They were hybrids who could have become almighty griffins, yet they choose to become humans to better be able to understand the needs and the hardships of their subjects. Tell me, Jorl, when is the last time that you went to sleep hungry? That you felt afraid of your future? Do you think you could do any better of these fleas if you weren't born a griffin? Tyrus caressed the statue's cheek, and its coldness stung at her heart, reopening old wounds. Is this pathetic anecdote supposed to answer my question? Jorl asked. Silpha, kick his ungrateful ass out of here. Tyrus's eyes blazed with mana that dried up her tears as her voice turned stone cold. Please, mother. She might have a violet core, but she's not a real awakened. Your puppy is human, and exhausted at that. Jorl said with a chuckle a second before Silpha's uppercut shut him up. Jorl snarled and shape-shifted into his griffin form, infusing himself with the power of all elements. His height at the withers was over 30 meters, 98.5 feet, tall and 52.5 meters, 172 feet long, but the underground palace was big enough to accommodate Tyrus's real body, let alone her offspring. Silpha just grabbed the enormous beak that appeared in front of her with both her arms and struck at it with her knees in a rapid sequence. Her left knee hit with such strength that only her hold prevented Joral's head to snap back. Her right knee struck a split second later, cracking the beak and making Joral wail in pain. Chapter 1069 Life Maelstrom Part 1. Dragons and phoenixes had to conjure the surrounding world energy and add their life force to it to produce origin flames. Griffins, instead, would absorb the world energy over time and store it inside their bodies to generate silver bolts of lightning called life maelstrom. Both processes didn't involve mana, only life force and world energy, but the principle behind them was different. Life maelstrom could use the stored power to temporarily boost their magical prowess or unleash it against their enemies to destroy them. The silver lightning was made of pure energy that could be used to supercharge both organic and inorganic matter, since everything on Mogur had mana. A small amount could enhance a living being's spells or hasten the growth of mana crystals. A huge amount, instead, would short-circuit the mana flow of anything injected with life maelstrom, causing them to self-harm due to their energy going haywire. On the one hand, it had no purifying effect, but on the other hand, life maelstrom could be used to either recharge or destroy artifacts and golems alike. Joral consumed part of the life maelstrom stored inside his body to unleash a storm of silver lightning bolts. Each one of them could flatten a mountain. Silpha had recognized the familiar sparks and moved to the safest place of the battlefield, under her opponent. She jumped upwards, striking at the griffin's ribcage with the strength of a missile and cracking it in several places. The lack of air dispelled the storm and made Joral spat out blood. Damn it! All those columns make it hard for me to move, whereas that flea can move nimbly. I need but one spell or hit to put her down. Joral was right, but Silpha knew her own limits as well. Letting an awaken breathe was a rookie mistake that she carefully avoided. Silpha used a flight spell to move faster than a bullet, hitting the joints of the griffin's forelegs. Joral couldn't feel pain due to darkness fusion, but each strike was strong enough to both damage his bones and force the limbs to bend, throwing the griffin off balance. Silpha bounced randomly from one leg to another like a pinball, driving Joral mad with fury. A single roar of a griffin infused with life maelstrom could raise the top of a mountain or dry up a lake. The shockwaves spread from their bodies and moved in every direction, making it impossible to avoid. The roar wasn't even a spell, so it didn't require any cast time. The impossible attack caught Silpha by surprise and sent her slamming against a wall with such strength that, in any other place but a guardian's home, it would have created a crater. Joral took a deep breath, using it to heal himself with invigoration, and spent another chunk of life maelstrom to conjure more silver lightning bolts. The thunderstorm hit Silpha while she was still casting her spell, leaving her unscathed. Green energy set her eyes ablaze and revealed the emerald streak among her hair that the queen always kept hidden. She replaced the spark of Joral's life force with her own, and the circular motion of her arms trapped every single bolt inside her body. She used part of life maelstrom to boost herself, sending the rest back at the griffin. A human using domination? Joral's shock intensified when Silpha showered him with silver bolts that ravaged his body. Yet only when the queen completed her gravity field did the shock turn into terror. The single breath of invigoration had allowed Joral only to mend some of his injuries. His cracked joints couldn't bear his weight now that Silpha had increased it by 100 folds. The griffin's forelegs broke, his bones turned into spears that pierced the flesh and sprayed blood everywhere, turning the colossal beast into a slithering worm. The only reason you're still alive is that Lady Tyrus ordered so, Catboy. The sword of Safel pointed at Joral's helpless throat made any nasty retort he could think of die in his throat. Begone! Silpha opened a gate so big that the griffin's massive body had no trouble going through it after gravity magic made him weightless, and the queen punched him on the beak, shattering it. Joral had become a living missile that crash-landed in a deserted plain several hundreds of kilometers from the castle. He was about to faint due to blood loss when Tyrus appeared beside his broken body, using her breathing technique, Mother Earth, to mend his wounds. Thanks, Mother. I'm sorry to have angered you. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. Tyrus cut him short while forcing him to shapeshift into human form against his will. I'm fed up with your tantrums. If power is the only thing you respect, in spite even of my feeling, we'll do this your way. Joral started to panic. Tyrus held him by the neck with one hand, and no matter how much he tried, no magic nor ability seemed to work. I hereby exile you from my home. The entirety of the Griffin Kingdom is forbidden ground to you. Come back, and I'll treat you as an enemy. Silpha is just a human that I trained for measly 30 years, whereas I have millennia of war and training against fellow guardians. Her voice was stone cold, with no trace of her usual warmth. I healed you solely because I wanted to make sure you got the message. Now clench your teeth and trouble your mother no more. Unlike Silpha's, Tyrus's fist reverberated throughout Joral's body, breaking all of his bones before he could break the speed of sound. When he landed in the blood desert, the impact turned the sand into glass, leaving Joral but one breath before death claimed him. Village of Lusha, Tron Woods, Litha's Tower. After Faluel's lesson ended, Litha's group had barely the strength to take a quick shower and grab a bite before they lost consciousness. They didn't want to spend the night in the tower again, especially Floria. They simply had no choice. Gods, 2 full days away from home. Celia will kill me. Naurin fell asleep the second after remembering that he could have asked to be invigorated again. The Razar appreciated Faluel's teachings, yet he missed the Protector's children dearly. In a foreign country where he was the only one of his kind, they managed to make him feel at home. No Camilla tonight? Solus asked while looking at the stars together with Lith. Big case. Again, after the events in Famar's mines, Journey is on the prowl. Even more than usual, I mean. She had no time to come back even for dinner, and as her assistant, Camilla can't leave either. Lith said, I'm a bit sad, but at the same time, I'm happy we got to spend some time alone. Well, almost alone. The sound of snoring coming from the open windows broke the feeling of intimacy, reminding them of the presence of their guests. A wave of Solus's hand closed the windows and made them soundproof, making it impossible to overhear them. Floria is still angry with you about me, you know? Solus said. I knew all along it would happen. Why do you think it took me so long to introduce the two of you? Lith thought about how Camilla would react in Floria's shoes and sighed. Chapter 1070 Life, Maelstrom Part 2. What do you mean? Solus loved to speak instead of using their mind link. It made her feel normal and allowed her to hear the sound of their voices. Are you angry with me as well? First, I kept you a secret from the entirety of Mogar, and now I leave you alone a lot. On top of that, I used you as an excuse to justify my actions after Floria broke up with me. Lith said, a bit, but not for the reasons you think. Solus replied, I'm happy you finally made me part of the group, and I understand why it took you so long. Now I realize how naive I was in the past, and how meeting a paranoid, cynical man was the best thing that could happen to me. A normal child would have never been able to keep the secret, dooming the both of us to become victims of unspeakable experiments. Another mage, instead, would have either enslaved me or forced me to become like Dawn. Even when you still didn't trust me, you always treated me with respect because you know the pain of being stranded amid a hostile world. Thanks to our bond, I experienced Mogar, growing and healing alongside you. Solus held his hand, while never averting her gaze from the waning moon above them. I must admit that, at first, I was angry and jealous of you spending so much time alone with Camilla. Over time, however, it helped me put things in the right perspective. Like Tista told me for years, I needed to get a life of my own. For a long time, I couldn't even imagine my life without you. Solus suddenly blushed, then turned pale and rushed to say, Don't get me wrong, I still can't. What I mean is that before I considered myself more like another of your limbs rather than a person. The time we spent apart helped me to grow, both as a woman and as a tower. She brought his hand to her face as if she was expecting to be caressed. Use invigoration on me and avoid checking me out with the excuse of a diagnosis. She chuckled. Lith had used his breathing technique on Solus many times in the past, yet none of it prepared him for what he saw. Inside her humanoid form, it was possible to distinguish the outline of organs, veins, and bones. Yet, more importantly, he could see a second core inside her body. It was different from everything he had encountered in all his life. The second core resembled a golem's power core, but it was complex beyond what Litha's mind could conceive. It was both small and hazy, making it hard to properly distinguish its features or the complex network of runes that surrounded it like several asteroid belts. but Lith could sense the power core getting stronger by the second. You never had a second core? When did it manifest? Lith asked. A bit after I obtained my energy body. Please, now focus on my human core. Solus replied. At first, Lith didn't understand her request. Solus's deep cyan core looked no different from all those he had examined in the past, at least until he used invigoration to look at it real close. Part of the cyan sphere was blurry, as if a small chunk of it had turned from solid into a highly compressed gas. It took Lith a while to realize that Solus missed part of her core, which caused her mana to leak and formed the blurry area. Once Lith understood the situation, he focused even more, checking Solus's two cores down to the slightest detail. The power core was deeply connected to the cyan core, keeping it stable and allowing it to slow down the mana leak. Lith's own core was linked with Solus's, providing it with more energy than it lost over time and slowly nurturing the damaged core. The shock left Lith with his mouth agape. He stared at Solus with eyes wide open for a few minutes, incapable of speaking a word. By my maker, you should see your face. She chuckled. If anyone saw you now, they would think that I just told you that I'm pregnant. For a long time, Solus had an energy slate with only eyes and a mouth for a face, but now that they were so close, Lith could almost see her nose and cheekbones. Didn't you wonder why it took me so long to gain my wisp form and reach the green core, whereas I quickly refined a cyan core after achieving my energy body? As I told you before, being apart did me good. Remaining at your finger nurtures my human core, of which I was in desperate need after almost dying of starvation. Yet it's by tapping into a mana geyser that I can nurture my tower core back to its full strength. A living core, no matter how powerful, cannot empower something so big and complex as a mage tower. Only a mana geyser can. After we started to spend more time on our own, my tower core managed to reassemble itself thanks to the constant exposure to the mana geyser. The more my tower core grows in power, the more stable my human core becomes, and the more efficiently I can process the energy I receive from you. Tista and I have studied the phenomenon for a while, and together we reached the same conclusions. The good news is that now I more or less know why Master Minadion did this to me, and the bad news is that I'm screwed. Maybe I failed my breakthrough, or maybe someone killed me. Whatever happened, my core cracked, bringing me beyond what even today's healing magic can repair. To give me more time, Master Minadion somehow fused me with her tower, using its power core and the massive amounts of energy it draws from the geysers to keep me stable. Unluckily, either the strain killed her or whoever did this to me came back to finish the job and killed Minadion as well. Last, but not least, whenever we are together in the tower, like now, my recovery speed skyrockets. It's still damn slow, and I have no idea when flesh will replace energy, but you've seen the progress I made. I can be human again. In the future, maybe I'll be able to keep my body without the tower to have a normal life. Solus gave Lith a radiant smile and took his hands into hers. Why do you say you're screwed then? Lith dragged Solus closer, embracing her with the foolish hope that physical contact would help her to recover faster. He discovered that not only her body's warmth was now no different from a regular person, but she also smelled good, whereas in the past, she had no smell. Because a cracked core cannot be healed. Her smile disappeared, but Lith couldn't notice it with her face buried in his shoulder. Saving Protector almost killed you, and you wouldn't have even succeeded without Scarlet's help. Even once both my cores go back to their full strength, I will always be dependent on our bond to survive. I will be a burden for you and force you to take care of me no matter what kind of life you're going to build for yourself. Chapter 1071 Foolishness and Wisdom Part 1. On top of that, even if we find a way to fix my core, I cannot part from the tower. I might become my own master after your death, but that would mean living an eternity of loneliness. Immortality would be my curse rather than my blessing. After losing everyone I love, it would be only a matter of time before grief and isolation drive me insane, as it happens to liches. Solus had never been so scared of her future. Finding the answers she had long searched had brought her no joy, only despair. Stop spewing nonsense, Solus. Lith said, you've never been a burden for me. You are my most precious friend and confidant. Our bond made me better, and I have yet to even start repaying you for all you did. I'll take care of you not because I have to, but because I want to. No matter what kind of mess my life will turn into, I want you in it. As for immortality, you and I are in the same boat. I can't afford to die without taking another trip to Never Never Land, so don't kill me off like that. Don't worry about the future. We'll deal with it when the time comes, just like we did with everything else. Together, Lith kissed her head, lulling Solus between his arms. Since we still have some time before going to bed, what do you say I prepare you my world's renowned hot chocolate with whipped cream and pancakes drowned in syrup? Lith asked with a soothing voice. Are you trying to give me diabetes? Solus nodded and chuckled at the same time. The good thing about having an energy body is that you can't get fat. You should enjoy it while you have the chance. Once you get your real body, you'll be like anyone else. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Lith playfully pinched at her belly. How dare you make fun of a lady? Solus laughed, trying to return the favor, but finding nothing to pinch at. I'll take your advice and a double chocolate. Then, maybe, I'll forgive you. While Lith prepared the food, Solus checked her body and realized that she had no idea how to prepare a single meal. Mages were often so focused on their research to pay no mind to things like cooking or sewing. The idea that to keep enjoying all of her favorite foods as she had always done without gaining 10 kilos per month, she would need to both exercise a lot and learn how to prepare them, made immortality look like a minor issue to Solus. Weghan region, near the lair of Agitor the Drake, in the central part of the Griffin Kingdom. Agitor was sound asleep even though the sun had just set. His latest experiment had not only been a massive failure, but it had also lasted over 3 days. The Drake was annoyed and in dire need of rest. Invigoration couldn't mend his wounded pride nor his bad mood. The only prescription was taking a bit of time off to learn from his mistakes. That's why when someone triggered all of his alarm arrays and knocked on his door, Agitor was royally pissed off even before learning the identity of the unwanted guest or why they were bothering him. This better be urgent, pal, because otherwise I'm going to paint you black and blue all over. The Drake resembled an oversized lizard covered in sapphire blue scales with a huge white horn coming out of his snout. Despite his huge size, Agitor moved as lithe as a cat, reaching the door in a split second. What the actual fuck? He said, noticing a ragged man asleep on his doorbell. How the heck does a human know how to find my buzzer, and how did he trigger yet dodge my traps? Agitor activated his mystical senses and arrays to make sure it wasn't some kind of elaborate ruse for an ambush. A lot of people would kill drakes for their sturdy scales that could be used to craft extraordinary protections. In a similar fashion, the drake's home was surrounded by human skins to remind all wannabe hunters that skinning was a game two could play. Only after all the security sweeps came back negative did he take a good sniff at the stranger. The ragged man smelled of dirt, loads of alcohol, and something that reminded the Drake of his own dissolute youth. Under all that stench, the smell of a fellow emperor beast was faintly detectable. If you want to sleep, go somewhere else. What do you want from me? The Drake asked. Oh, sorry. Morok managed to yawn, burp, and fart at the same time, releasing a noxious gas that wiped away any trace of sleep left in Agitor's body. I need a ride back to the Urna's Archduchy to collect my prize since those bastards dropped me like a bad habit, he said before literally falling asleep on the ground with a thud. What kind of idiot has just stumbled in my house? Agitor asked the heavens while rolling his eyes. Be more specific, damn it. Do you have any idea how big an archduchy is? There are several awakened lords living there. Either you tell me where you want to go, or I swear to the gods that I'll warp you to a random location. Take me to the Urna's household. Thanks. Morok stopped snoring long enough to answer and then promptly resumed. Tired of playing along with all that nonsense, Agitor used invigoration on Morok, cleansing his body from substances and fatigue alike. It doesn't work like that, pal. Start from the beginning. Who are you and what do you want? The Drake asked. You fiend. Morok looked at the Drake with outrage, making him feel guilty even though he had no idea why. That was some first-rate booze and chemical joy. Do you have any idea how much it cost me? I demand compensation. Do you want me to pay for messing with your intoxication? Agitor was flabbergasted but no longer felt guilty. You break it, you pay for it. Why is the warp array still inactive? Morok extended his hand for the money while looking at the messy lab in contempt. Dude, this place is a stinky mess. Do you have no shame? The failure and consequent explosion had indeed left the lab in a pitiful state. Pieces of broken equipment lay everywhere, and the stench of burned ingredients gave the lair a pungent smell. Yet hearing those words coming from someone that made his lab look and smell like a rosebud in comparison almost gave Agiter a stroke. First, I'm not going to give you a single copper piece. Second, if you don't like my house, go to Famar and use the Human's Gate. The Drake said, have some respect, dude. I'm a fellow Emperor Beast and a war hero at that. I faced Baba Yaga, barely survived the legendary battle of the three armies, and then crawled my way here. Is it too much to ask for a little help? Morok said, even if I wanted to believe you met a living legend like Baba Yaga and lived to tell the tale, I call bullshit on the rest. The last war happened before I was even born, and I've never heard about such battle. Chapter 1072 Foolishness and Wisdom Part 2. No duh, genius. It happened 3 days ago, right outside the Bellin Caves. The humans and the undead battled against Scourge and got their asses handed to them. Remind me to not hit on his sister on the rebound in case things go badly with Quilla. The girl is hot, but it's not worth the trouble of messing with a guy like that. Morok said, wait, I know neither of those girls, but Scourge? I sent him to those caves, and they are barely an hour of flight from here if you're slow. How the heck did it take you so long to get here? I can't believe you're able to shapeshift, and yet you've never learned how to fly. Agiter felt a headache coming on. Of course I know how to fly. It's just that on my way here I stopped in a few cities to vent and have some fun. Morok replied, 3 days on a bender is not having fun. You've got problems. Agiter said, you'd be depressed as well if after months of work, after risking your life to save your damsel in distress, all the thank you received was the flip of the bird. Scratch that. What could you possibly know about women? Morok sighed with such honesty that the Drake had a hard time not killing him on the spot. I can send you to the Urna's Archduchy, but it's the middle of the night there. Agiter said, I doubt anyone will receive you so late, especially while in such a state. You're right, man. I need to clean up and get some sleep. Do you mind if I crash here for the night? A wave of Morok's hand cleaned his face, hair, and hands. Actually, I do. Agiter's left eye twitched at the idea of having to put up with his guest for 1 second longer. The Drake couldn't wait to get rid of him. There's a cozy little village. Okay, thanks. Morok cut him short and fell asleep on a pile of enchanted clothes that the Drake had realized as prototypes of a new kind of armor. Agiter's eyes became two fiery slits brimming with mana as he took a deep breath that filled his mouth with black flames. It was the first time in centuries that someone dared to barge in his house and disrespect him like that. Either he's really heartbroken or there's something wrong with his head. I'll cut him some slack and wait until tomorrow morning before kicking him out. Who knows, maybe invigoration actually failed and he's still drunk. Gods, I never thought the day would come that I would wish invigoration failed me. Agiter thought. The following morning, an annoying voice woke up the Drake and reminded him that no good deed goes unpunished, no matter the world you live in. Like most lesser dragons, Agiter slept on a small mound comprised of his most prized possessions. Gods, it wasn't a nightmare. The Drake whined while getting up. The two had breakfast together, and during that time, Agiter casually asked Morok about the events in the caves. No matter how obnoxious he was, the tyrant had yet to tell a single lie. If there really was a crystal mine nearby, and Baba Yaga resided there, it was worth the trip. Digging out crystals would take too long, but her knowledge could save Agiter months of research. Despite her obsession with resurrection, Baba Yaga was considered an honorable character second in wisdom only to Ligang. Getting her help would more than make up for all the troubles Morok had caused the Drake. The tyrant didn't leave out any detail, especially those meaningless like how hot Baba Yaga was in her mother form, how the crone resembled a prune, and how smelly Nandi was. The guy needed a bath even more than you do, and I don't say it lightly. Morok conjured a small breeze to clear the air. You should do something about that nervous tick. Agiter's left eye kept twitching in anger, but his tone was polite. Did you really refuse her offer? In exchange for your help, you could have asked Baba Yaga the secret of her white core, or at least to awaken you. To what end? Morok asked. My old man is over 600 years old, and believe me, he has more bad memories than good. Nandi seemed more ancient than my grandfather, and even more bitter. Baba Yaga was nice, but I think she's just like her creations, broken. She must have lost something or someone important to her, so she desperately tries to give others happiness just to fill the void her past trauma created. I'm not interested in a long life unless I've got something to live for. Be honest with me. Did becoming an awakened make you happy? Agitor was taken aback by Morok's unexpected burst of wisdom. He pondered the question deeply before answering. I don't have a companion in years. Most of my friends are dead. My kids hate me because I refuse to awaken them. And I spend most of my days accumulating power and knowledge that I probably will never use. The Drake had just woken up and his mood was already ruined. Of course I am. Agitor lied through his teeth before sucker warping the tyrant to his destination. It took Morok seconds to reach the gates of the Erna's household, where the house staff had been carefully instructed to not invite him in nor to ask him to wait for Journey's return. The guards gave him an envelope containing a smaller envelope, a map to Faluel's lair, and the following note. Dear Baron Eerie, thanks for your loyal service and for protecting my daughters. My word is my bond, so I can assure you that I'll honor my part of our deal. Give the sealed envelope to my daughter Quilla, who is currently residing at the marked location, and I'll do the rest. P.S. Break the seal at your own risk. If you do it, I'll consider myself free from my obligation. Journey had signed the note using all of her titles and names to stress how she considered their contract to be over and done. After checking the envelope against the light in the hope of reading its content, Morok gave up and reached Faluel's lair. Who are you and what do you want? The Hydra didn't like unexpected visitors, especially those who robbed her of the little free time she had before starting her lessons. My name is Morok Eerie, and I've got a letter for Quilla Ernest. Are you Faluel, the lord of this region and the woman who's mentoring her? He had never told Agitor his name nor asked that of his host, yet this time Morok introduced himself properly. Not because he actually cared, but because, according to all his drinking buddies, making a good first impression on Quilla's friends would improve his chances after their rough goodbye in Kulla. I've never heard about you, and Quilla is not here. Leave me the letter, and I'll make sure she receives it. Faluel could smell both Eerie being an emperor beast and some odd enchantment on the letter. Chapter 1073 Foolishness and Wisdom 3. Any of those after the Ernest's heads could hire a mercenary beast like Gadorf to do the dirty work for them. Faluel wouldn't let a stranger in her home, nor the letter reach Quilla before examining it thoroughly. No way I'll entrust my hope and dreams to someone I just met. If you mess up, I'll be done for. Do you mind if I wait for her here? Morok said. Yes, I do. Faluel snarled at Morok for taking the words out of her mind and saying them out loud. Go away. When Quilla arrives, I'll tell her about you, and then she can decide whether wants to call you or not. Yeah, right. If I had her contact rune, why the heck would I go through this hassle just for a goddamn letter? I'll speak slowly so you can understand. I only asked your permission out of courtesy. I'm not going to move from here. Morok sat on a rock and looked up at the brightening sky. I beg your pardon. The air around Faluel started to crackle and her hair to dance in the air. Challenging the authority of a lord was no laughing matter, especially from those who weren't even part of the council. Man, first the stinky Drake, and now you. You lords sure are pretty dumb, but at least you smell good and have a tight little ass. Do you mind turning around so at least I can look at something nice to pass the time? He asked. That does it. Faluel roared and shape-shifted into her real form. Her short, stumpy body was as wide as a building and as sturdy as a mountain. It allowed her to move nimbly on the ground despite her size. On top of that, by shifting the weight on her 4 legs, she could keep the balance even when her 7 snake heads and their respective long necks moved in completely different directions. Each one of her 7 heads had its scales streaked of a different color, and their eyes shone with different elemental mana. Faluel exposed her sets of fangs while towering at a height of 20 meters, 66 feet. I take that back. I don't mind big butts, but yours is just too much. He mocked her while unsheathing his blades. It takes more than an overgrown snake to scare me off, sis. Faluel's first head swooped down while empowered by earth fusion. Morok tried to dodge it, but she moved too fast. He took the hit and almost plunged into the ground, like a nail hit by a hammer. That was my first and last warning. Get out of my turf now. No way. This isn't even my final form. Morok shape-shifted and his skin became snow white, with only one big red eye in the middle of his forehead, Another eye the size of a football appeared on his chest, and two more on his shoulders. His appearance was still humanoid, but he was now over 2 meters, 6 feet 7 inches, tall. His nose had disappeared, leaving only 2 slits on his face, and his mouth was full of several rows of shark-like teeth. Faluel immediately recognized the emperor beast known as Tyrannical Eye, or just as Tyrant. They were the magical beast equivalent of Balers, but unlike them, tyrants weren't part of the fallen races, and their mastery over the elements wasn't as developed. Like Hydras, they were naturally gifted for the art of domination, but even the strongest tyrant could only develop up to 6 eyes. Domination over the 7th element, mana, was impossible to them. Morok exploited the split second. Faluel froze in surprise to open his 4 eyes and pour 4 beams of focused elemental energy onto his own weapons. The blades absorbed and amplified the beams, turning them into pillars of great destructive powers, each one aimed at a different head. I recognized that weapon. I crafted the baby fangs for Glemos' son. Is that really you? Faluel effortlessly dispelled the pillars and nailed Morok to the ground with one of her forelegs. Do you know my old man? With no mana left, and his body more battered than after his trip to Kulla, Morok thought that having a civil conversation wasn't such a bad idea. Yes, Hydras and Tyrants are usually on good terms due to our similar abilities. Why are you still using that junk? I gave it to your father as a present the day you were born. Baby fangs are just a learning toy to help a young tyrant to choose their weapon and master the power of their eyes. Faluel said, because my father is an asshole. He told me it was my coming-of-age gift, and that he had paid for it dearly. Morok cursed Glemos' name in many creative ways. You already have 4 out of 6 eyes open. How old are you exactly? Morok had 1 eye more than Lith opened, which piqued Faluel's curiosity. Sooner or later, she would have to teach him domination, and having a training partner of similar talent would speed up things greatly. I'm 24. Why? On top of being a short-fused grandma, are you also a cradle snatcher? Morok regretted those words the moment they came out of his mouth. I'm sorry, I meant those words but not to say them out loud. Adding insult to injury didn't make things better. Faluel hit him again with one of her heads and knocked Morok out. After shape-shifting back into her human form, the Hydra checked Morok's equipment and found it mediocre. Glemos, your son is as much of a jerk as you are. Our children are supposed to be better than us. Faluel then took Journey's letter and examined it with invigoration. The pseudo-core on the envelope needed a specific imprint, otherwise the slightest damage would trigger the enchantment and destroy the letter inside. The Hydra locked the unconscious prick in one of her layer's cells and waited for her students. When they arrived, aside from Lith, Solus, and Tista, everyone seemed out of a sleepless night. They had deep bags under their eyes, yawned non-stop, and judging from their slouched backs, they were far from excited at the idea of receiving a new lesson. Master Faluel, not to sound ungrateful, but could you please give us a bit of free time? Quilla said, we arrive here at sunrise and leave past nightfall after getting so tired that we can barely keep our eyes open. I do love magic, but I want to be able to visit my parents and maybe take a little care of my personal life. We worked so hard not even at the academy. On top of that, we always had the weekends free. Freya felt the same way, but since her situation was precarious at best, she didn't even dare to nod. Who would ever want a harbinger who asks for vacations before even starting her job? She thought. This is just your 3rd day here, Quilla, and it was you who insisted on taking part of my lessons. The point of this is to strengthen your bodies and allow you to wield powerful magic without collapsing. Faluel checked everyone's condition with invigoration. Floria, your body is stable enough to use invigoration, but I strongly advise against it. The same applies to all of you. Invigoration is a great tool, but if abused it can hinder your growth. Chapter 1074 Foolishness and Wisdom 4. By rejuvenating your bodies, it both keeps impurities from forming over time and your bodies from strengthening properly in between breakthroughs. Tista, to not need help to survive your next core refinement. You need impurities whereas Floria has too many of them. She needs to remove the excess and reinforce her body, which is still a long shot from that of a proper blue cord awakened. Quilla, Freya, Naurand, if you remain so weak, your magic will also be limited. Her words made everyone groan. making them feel like Lith had an unfair advantage over them, just like at the academy. That said, you're also right. A rigorous training requires rest. Otherwise, you'll never be able to absorb the knowledge I'm teaching you, and it would just roll off your back. I plan on giving you free time, but only once you've learned the basics. Speaking of free time, this is for you. Faluel handed Quilla the letter. The moment she recognized her mother's handwriting, a cold shiver ran down her spine. Journey used letters solely to deliver orders. Whenever there was room for negotiation, she would always meet her children in person. Quilla imprinted the enchanted wax seal, and it crumbled along with the envelope's protective spell. The letter was surprisingly long, and its tone mild. Dear Quilla, during the past years, you've rejected all the suitors I introduced to you regardless of their talent, looks, or personality. At this point, I have no idea what you're looking for in a companion, and I came to believe that you ignore it as well. I'm growing afraid that if you keep up like this, you'll let life pass by you and miss a lot of experiences. I'm not as worried about your sisters because they both have the strength of character to pursue what they want when they find it. No matter how wonderful magic is, it's a job like any other, and once you grow older and live on your own, it will not give you a birthday present, it will not take care of you when you are sick, nor will it bring you a smile when you're sad. That's what people are for. Baron Erie is the perfect opportunity to face your trauma head-on and understand at least everything you don't want in a companion. I've spent very little time with him, and I can assure you he's a living compendium of flaws. After a single date with him, I'm sure you'll be able to see the good in any other man. Remember that I gave him my word you would go out with him and to wait at least 1 hour before dumping him. With love, Mom. Is he still here? After reading the letter, Quilla had to admit that most of Journey's observations were on point. Sure, it was likely to be just a ruse to manipulate her feelings, but it didn't make Journey's words any less true. Quilla didn't have Freya's endless line of suitors, nor Floria's guts to make the first move when she met someone interesting. Yeah, he is a piece of work, so I had him detained to keep me from either ripping my ears or his tongue off. Faluel's angry voice surprised Lith. He knew the Hydra the best, and he had never seen her that livid before, not even when dealing with the Council's underhanded ploys. I wonder who could possibly be obnoxious enough to make Faluel angry yet manage to not get themselves killed. Lith thought. The Hydra warped Quilla to the prison, and then she took Lith aside to share with him her plan about using Morok as a sparring partner for domination. You two could work together and learn from each other's mistakes. Even though he is older than you, Morok managed to open 4 eyes, whereas even my son is still stuck at 2 heads despite being the same age. Domination isn't something that you can share with your friends, nor can they learn about it. That's why I used only elemental mastery during our spar. Solus can help you to understand how domination works, but she might not be able to control more than one element. Faluel said, I agree with you. Who knows? Maybe he could even help me to open the rest of my eyes, or at least to understand what keeps them closed. Yet Morok can't be allowed to stay here. He's not an awakened, a healer, and not even a forge master. More importantly, he doesn't know about Solus, and I have no reason to trust him. I won't sacrifice what little life of her own she's finally achieved for that jackass, Lith said while caressing Solus's ring. Those words, and the moments shared together the previous night, moved her heart. Thank heavens. After 5 minutes with him, the idea of having Morok around was enough to give me the creeps. Faluel sighed in relief. The moment Quilla is done with him, I'll warp him as far away as I can. Meanwhile, Quilla cleared her throat several times before realizing that Morok wasn't just asleep, but out cold, black, and blue. Wow, I knew you were dumb. But pissing off a Hydra gives a new meaning the word. Quilla healed him while inwardly griping at the idea of spending time with such a moron. Good morning to you as well, Quilla. How's your sister? Morok asked after recognizing her from her voice, since his eyes were still too swelled to see a thing. What? She said in surprise. I mean the tall one, not the hot one. She was still dying before you left, and I've been quite worried about the 3 of you. He replied, misunderstanding her question. She's fine, thanks. Are you here for the date my mother promised you? Quilla blushed in embarrassment. Not only had he heard her rude remarks, but Morok had also asked her about Floria, showing more good manners than her. Yes and no. I mean, I'm here to ask you out, but I don't want you to feel forced because of my deal with Archon Ernest. I did that just to have the opportunity to speak alone with you. If you're not interested, I'll get out of your hair." Morok half spoke and half groaned. Faluel had broken many of his bones, making even breathing painful. You stalled Floria for months just for that. That was the creepiest and most flattering thing anyone had ever done for her. Not stalked, protected her from the shadows. I did it as my job, not for some weird fetish. And yes, just for that. Both the academy and your house staff refused to take my messages. What choice did I have? He shrugged and gave himself a pang. Do you realize that's too much effort for someone you know for barely more than 2 weeks? No, it isn't. When we first met, I thought you were just a pretty face with a body to match. But during our stay in Kula, I got to know you better. His words made her turn to a shade of purple. Even though you're as fit as my grandma, you proved to be smarter than all those old fossils put together. Your ingenuity saved us more times than my concussion allows me to count, and you even took down more golems than anyone else. Chapter 1075 Core Principles Part 1. It's easy being brave when you're stronger than any human will ever be, and you can cast spells with your mind, taking everyone by surprise. You are just a human, yet when the ODI were on the rampage and everyone, me included, only wanted to save their own skin, you kept a level head. You found a way to shut down the reactor and kicked me in the nuts to risk your life alongside your friends. That's the moment I stopped being envious of Verhin for having such a cool girl in his life and decided I wanted to at least try to be worthy of the affection of a person like you. I may have gone overboard accepting your mother's assignment, but when I heard that you didn't cut Lith off even after seeing him go all out, I thought that maybe you would have accepted me as well. Morok shape-shifted into his tyrant form, looking at her reaction and pleasantly noticing that Quilla didn't flinch. As Baba Yaga told you, I was born a human emperor-beast hybrid, but I relinquished my human nature just because it made my life easier. That said, here are a few things you should know about me. I spent so much time alone that I have forgotten the basics of social interaction. I'm rude, and my mouth moves faster than my brain. If after hearing all this you are still willing to go out with me, I promise you that I'll do my best to make the experience as less unpleasant as I can. Quilla finished healing him in silence, pondering Morok words. On the one hand, the way he had described her was beyond charming, pointing out qualities that Quilla herself had never thought of having. On the other hand, Morok was really rude. He clearly found Freya hotter than Quilla, and he wasn't even human. Just a faceless white thing full of eyes that looked way less cool than a wormling and more out of a small child's nightmare. Thanks for your kind words. I'm really flattered by your attentions. I'm feeling a but incoming. Morok sighed. But I'm really busy right now. I've barely got the time to sleep. Quilla said, if you give me your contact rune, we can set up a date as soon as Master Faluel gives me a day off. Quilla took her communication amulet out of her dimensional item. Mom is right, and so is Freya. If I don't date, I can't find anyone. Maybe getting out of my comfort zone is exactly what I need right now. Worst case scenario, I've only wasted a few hours of my life. She thought. Gods, yes. I did it. She said yes. Morok clenched his fists in triumph and made strange gestures before remembering Quilla was still there. I mean, sure thing. Call me whenever you want. I'm unemployed, so I've got lots of free time. He mistook her stupefied gaze for scorn, so he rushed to say, I mean, I'm between jobs. I don't plan of sitting on my ass for long. While he rambled an excuse after the other, Quilla sighed and exchanged their contact runes. Now you'd better go. Master Faluel is about to start her lesson. She said, no goodnight kiss. He asked with a disappointed look on his face. It's early morning, and this wasn't a date. Master Faluel. Quilla yelled. Yeah, but back at Baba Yaga's hut, it was still night. A warping array cut Morok short and moved him thousands of miles away, in the middle of nothing. And I must have pissed off the Hydra big time. I really need to learn when to shut up. There was nothing around him as far as the eye could see. For all Morok knew, it could be the Blood Desert or even the Empire. Today, I'll teach you about the art of forge mastering and about the many similarities it shares with healing. Faluel had a radiant smile, hoping that Morok would never reach civilization in time for his date. At some point in their life, all mages learn a bit of both. Healing magic allows you to treat conditions that even invigoration can't fix, while forge mastering provides us not only with combat tools, but also with commodities like communication amulets or dimensional items. Both disciplines require a subject to be practiced, but while healing affects physical matter, forge mastering deals with energy, leaving the physical aspect to blacksmiths or craftsmen in general. Another way of seeing it is to consider healing the discipline that studies life forces, while forge mastering studies the mana cores. Even though it led to terrible consequences, Lith managed to fix Protector's core by merging his knowledge as both a healer and forge master. Faluel said, making everyone shudder at the memory. Before starting, let's answer the question, what is a mana core? Except for Awakened, who can actually see it thanks to their breathing technique, to anyone else those two words have no significance. Quilla, Freya, come here please. The two did as Faluel asked and reached her in front of the class. The Hydra placed her hands above their shoulders and channeled her breathing technique, Lifestream, through their bodies. Suddenly Faluel's lair disappeared, and the two women found themselves looking inside themselves as if they had used invigoration. At the same time, to the rest of the class, their bodies glowed with a golden light filled with black spots, and midway between their solar plexus and their navel, there was a sphere of energy the size of an apple. All living bodies produce mana. That's why the seventh element is also called the element of life. Mana is stored and accumulated in your cores, ready to be used when necessary. As you can see, Quilla's core is bright blue with tinges of violet. She's still 18 and cores develop up to the 20th years of age, so she could achieve a deep violet or even a bright violet core. Unfortunately, that places her beyond the level where even I can awaken her. Faluel sighed. Freya, instead, has a bright cyan core. The color of a core determines not only the strength of the spells conjured, but also the quantity of mana stored inside the mage's body. Both of them are not awakened. In fact, their cores produce just enough mana to fill their bodies, and their mana flow is so slow that it's nigh unnoticeable. What about the golden glow and the black dots? Naurin asked, respectively me covering their organs to not make you puke your breakfast and the impurities. Lith, Tista, it's your turn. After the pairs of siblings exchanged positions, Faluel used her lifestream again. As you can see, an awakened core is akin to a heart. It constantly beats, absorbing the world energy with every breath they take, and then releasing pulses of mana that course through their bodies. The phenomenon is what we call mana flow. Each cycle tempers the body, making it able to offer less resistance when casting spells and slowly removing the impurities as the next breakthrough approaches. Even though Lith and Tista are both awakened, a blue core is different from all the others.